We're live, okay. Good afternoon. During the declared emergency, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and an in-person attendance limitation. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is now called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawfully non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Anyone in attendance who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and TLAB, in the event of an appeal, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee rendered here today, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances, to the Local Appeal Tribunal, Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure will be as follows. We'll call each item in the order listed in the agenda. In making your submissions where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll comment when you're approaching the 5-minute mark. When addressing the committee, please start off by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. We deal with planning issues. We don't deal with building concerns or other issues between neighbors. So the applicant or agent on a contested application goes first, makes a presentation to the committee. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing made at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if it's being substantially revised to ensure that the revised application is both accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they finish their presentation. Then, when all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent is given an opportunity to rebut only those issues and answer those questions that were raised by the other speakers. That will then mark the end of the discussion. The application is then taken into committee for a decision. Are there any declarations of interest of panel staff or staff on the items before us at 1 o'clock agenda? None to declare, okay. Deferral requests, we'll deal with the deferral requests, clear them from the agenda. I believe there is item number 29 was supposed to be revised, but it was fixed up on the additional materials, so they can now proceed. So that's it. We do not have any deferral requests for the 1 o'clock agenda. Okay, so we'll now start off with the first item on this afternoon's agenda, item number 18747, the Queensway. And this is an application to construct a 2-story addition above the existing building, which will contain 4 residential units. There are two variances. We have revised plans. Planning has a condition of approval that it be constructed as illustrated on the architectural plans as it relates to the garbage enclosure area in the garage. And transportation, Mr. Carvalina was, I believe, requesting a deferral as no parking is shown, and they need to justify the parking deficiency of 10 spaces. And I don't believe that's been changed by the additional materials. So we have one speaker, the agent, the architect for the application, Yaroslav Overchuk.
Hello, but I'm just assistant of owner Rustem Israel, who is supposed to speak with you. I'm just assisting in terms of drawings, so I'm not architect, just drafting person.
So who's supposed to be making the presentation?
Rustem Israel, the owner. He's in the list.
Well, is the owner with us?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, no one registered.
Rustem
I have the owner listed as I Studio Design Inc. It's not an individual company. So who is presenting this application? Because there's a very important question right now, is that transportation is looking for a deferral. Are you aware of that, sir? You're the architect? So planning has written, the Transportation Services Department has written to us April 22nd. It should be on the in the application center in the materials. You or your client could have found that. They're saying that 10 spaces are required on site. On the site plan, no parking spaces are proposed. The applicant must supply acceptable documentation to justify the parking deficiency of 10 spaces. It says, based on the foregoing, we recommend deferral to allow the applicant an opportunity to revise their proposal or submit documentation to address the above noted requirements.
Mr. Chair, I've found the owner that Yaroslav was speaking about, so I can check him if you'd like.
Yep.
Rustem? Rustem, can you hear us? I've unmuted you. Hi, Yaroslav. I can't establish a connection with the owner. I see him here, but he hasn't replied. So I think.
Okay, I quickly explain. The line of parking at the back of the building, Green P parking, and in front there also a number of parking from QUEENSWAY. So I think it's supposed to be part of negotiation between city and the owner, and there could be situations that some parking spaces could be rented by owner.
Anyway,
it's based on
Anyway, planning department is the transportation department is recommending deferral while you work that out. We can't give you the approval of your application and then have you work it out. You have to work it out first, and transportation is suggesting it be deferred for such purpose. You have a copy of their memo. Yeah, you have a copy of their memo dated April 22nd under the Application Information Center. And so we will have to defer this if you can, because you have a deficiency, unless the members are prepared to just give you that 10 parking space deficiency with no strings attached. I see there would be 4 units. I don't know why you need 10 parking spots, but that's something that you can work out with transportation. So committee members, I don't know if you have any questions, but it would appear that this application needs to be deferred in order to deal with this issue.
I have a question of staff, if I may, through the chair. This looks to be almost a mirror image of the building directly adjacent to it. And I think 10 parking spaces for this particular building is excessive, if I do say so myself. I don't understand the need for 10 parking spaces. That being said, that's what transportation has requested. I'm just wondering if this is in fact accurate, and whether or not the building beside it had a similar requirement, because it looks to be a mirror image of that building.
Calculations are done.
I think that was a question. Sir, I think Mrs. Alderson had a question for
Question of
staff,
staff.
not for you. So please let's have
Okay,
staff
sorry.
answer. I guess the question is, there is a deficiency of 10 parking spaces. Doesn't mean that they would be willing to accept less, but the actual, the variance is 10 spaces. So you're right, planning may agree, or transportation may agree to, let's say, if there's 4 units, maybe 4 spots or 6 spots, whatever. But that is the actual variance, it's 10.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the application is before us with a zoning review. So it was the bylaw was applied by city staff, and they did identify a requirement of 10 parking spaces. Now, the transportation division has asked for some kind of justification to go to 0. That wasn't submitted with the application, and it's up to the committee to make a decision whether or not they're comfortable with proceeding with no parking spaces, because that's what was identified by our buildings division in the zoning review.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so in any event, that is the variance. The question is, doesn't mean that transportation won't agree to something less, but at this point, unless the committee members are prepared to give them a 10 spot, 10 down to 0, because they haven't identified, I guess, any spots. There are some, I heard the agent, the architect, the artist lab saying something about there are some at the front and some at the back, but I guess they're not shown on the site plan, so it would seem that, we have 50 applications here, 33 left to go, that we're not going to be able to negotiate something that's in the purview of transportation as to how many spots, unless we say 4 units,
Chair?
4 spots.
Neil Palmer here. Just if it's going to be deferred, perhaps we could get clarification from planning staff on how many spots are required. If I look at the site plan, they're asking for 4 for the residential, 0.8 for visitor, and 6 for commercial. So that to me ends up being 10.8. They've said 10. So is it 10 or 11? Because 0.8 to me would be 1 spot.
Yeah, whatever.
So
whatever the requirement
if we're
is.
getting a deferral.
Yeah.
No, if we're getting a deferral, perhaps staff could clarify that, how that little 0.2
It wouldn't
disappears
be
or 0.8 disappears.
Yeah, it would be transportation and not planning, but that's perhaps they can hone in on that before it comes back as to how many. Oh, there is an office component to this building. Okay. Yeah. So we don't know, so I'm, unless someone's willing to make a motion for less 10 deficiency or less than 10, whether he comply or not, I think to start working this out now and listening to how many, they're not shown on the site plan, they have to be shown, so I think we have to defer.
I think unfortunately we have to make a motion for deferral. So in order to clarify this with transportation and planning, so I'm prepared to make a motion for deferral.
Okay, thank you,
Regrettably.
Mr. Wilson. Okay. Neil Palmer, seconding that? Thank you.
Yeah,
All
second.
in favor? Okay, unanimously, the application has been deferred. Okay, thank you, Yaroslav Joverchek. You can work that out with transportation when you're ready to go. Have it contact staff to put it on the next available agenda. Okay, so the next item is item number 1946, the Kingsway Crescent. And this is an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage and a swimming pool in the rear yard. A previous Committee of Adjustment application approved variances relating to gross floor area, floor space index, side yard setback, rear yard setback, dwelling length and depth. And we have 7 new variances with respect to this pool. There's a covering letter, which I don't quite understand the rationale. We have 2 letters of opposition from 24 Queen Anne Road, 2 letters, one from each spouse, I believe. And then in the additional materials, we have some conditions of approval from transportation. We also have urban forestry condition number 1. And at the end of the day, after all of that, the applicant is asking for a refund on some basis, dealing with the fact that these. Oh, anyway, we'll let the applicant explain in her own words. So on this application, we have the agent Lucas Cocomello, as well as the agent at 42, the neighbor at 42 Kingsway Crescent, and as well, it's not sure, we also have the agent and the owner as to who's going to present.
Mr. Chair,
Ian Perez.
Mr. Chair, the owner will be presenting the application.
Okay, so Ian Perez and not Lucas Cocomello. Oh no, the owner is listed as Maria Damata. So who is Ian Perez?
He will be presenting the application.
Is he the owner?
It says here in the notes he's the homeowner.
Because on the public notice it says it's Maria D'Amato. Well, anyway, he can explain. So.
And Mr. Chair, if you can keep the refund request separate under a different motion. After
Yes, yeah, we're not going to deal with that till we've dealt with the application. Correct. That's, I guess, our normal procedure for that. Okay, so Ian Perez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ian Perez. I'm actually the co-owner of 46 Kingsway Crescent with my wife, Maria D'Amato.
Okay.
We have both lived in the Kingsway for well over 20 years. In fact, we moved within 3 kilometers of our former home. We're a huge supporter of the preservation of the Kingsway style of homes and engaged a highly qualified architect to ensure that our home was a timeless classic style. We're also huge supporters of maintaining and expanding softscape as well as green space. And we have planted over 200 plants, trees, and shrubs, everything from Hicks yews, 6-foot emerald cedars, 6-foot Japanese maples, 7-foot baby blue spruce trees, rhododendron bushes, hydrangeas, boxwoods. It was quite a sizable landscaping plan. We also planted new green space and removed the large original arched driveway and large flagstone walkway on the north side of the property, which was causing a rapid decline in the 3 large city trees on the north and northeast corners. And I'm pleased to report that all 3 city trees, including the catalpa in the north side rear yard, were pruned by Davey tree experts in 2018, of course with a permit at our cost. And all the 3 trees have significantly rebounded with new growth in 2020 and 2021, as they are now being watered regularly through our irrigation system. But Mr. Chairman, you made reference to a cover letter. So we did submit a cover letter on March 24th, 2021 at the request of staff to support this second committee meeting. And the situation is such that this site has seen 2 separate city examiners arrive at 2 different sets of variances.
Okay.
So the original plan.
Sorry, if I can just interrupt for a second. Yeah, we're going to deal with the refund issue separately at the end. The issue about you're claiming you need. So it looks like you got this approval, I guess, in September 2018. So it's been built, correct? And
Correct.
the confusion I had reading your letter, whether a pool was part of that application. And in terms of 1 examiner, 2 examiners, 5 examiners, if you had like the architect, you had a representative, whatever changes they asked for and they made, that was you and or your architect who made those changes. You may be saying that it was different examiners had different results. I'd like you to explain that as part of your, but the first instance is to look at this application for the 7 variances related to this pool. Your argument related to whether you should get some kind of a refund is a secondary separate issue, as Mr. Carvalino just pointed out, and we're going to deal with these 2 things separately. So I suggest you focus your contents of your presentation, at least in the first instance, of dealing with why these 7 variances should be approved, why they're minor, and worthy of support.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So the original plan submission that came to committee on August 4th, 2018 was always the intended plan. And the 2 items that are triggering the variances are the pool in the rear yard and the driveway off of Kingsway Crescent. And I would just comment that both the pool and the driveway were built in the identical location as set out in that August 2018 Committee of Adjustment submission. And that was actually the plan that was accepted by the first examiner. And I would comment that there was no opposition noted for these two items, including from the City of Transportation in their 2018 report, as well as their updated 2021 reports. There was no opposition for the driveway. Yes, the architect did make changes to the plans because we were delayed from the August meeting. And frankly, I was in a rush to obtain a permit to make sure that we could actually close the build before the winter of 2018, 2019. Yep. And as a result, the second examiner was assigned to the file because the first examiner, we understand, went on maternity leave. And that second examiner stood firm on not granting a permit and not allowing us to go forward unless we actually put the driveway on the abutting street, given that it's a corner lot. That's where this sort of challenges started. So in order to
do you not challenge? Sorry, do you not challenge that examiner and say, "Hey, the examiner just went off on maternity leave. They were the whatever examiner that was completely different." Did you challenge it? Because it looks like reading your letter that those changes, including placing the driveway in the rear yard from the flanking street, thereby forcing the removal of the pool. So, to me,
yes,
that
Mr. Chairman,
you knew that the new set of conditions or plans or variances from that second examiner forced you to remove your pool. So you, I guess,
yes, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Sorry, Mr.
So at that point, back in 2018, because of your, you wanted to get the house built, you wanted to get it closed in before winter, you begrudgingly accepted that change, I guess, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry to keep interrupting. Yes, Mr. Chairman, correct.
You'll get some extra time. So no. I just wanted to clarify.
No problem. So you're absolutely right. So we did provide pushback to the second examiner, who was quite obstinate, honestly, in terms of changing her mind. She was insistent that the driveway had to be from the flanking street and was not going to budge. So we were stuck in a situation where we update the plans to get the permit, or we have a protracted debate with that second examiner. And I would respectfully submit to the planning department that two examiners should not come up with a different set of variances. I think it's unfair to applicants, and it should never happen. And frankly, had the second examiner not been assigned to the file and everything had moved forward based on the first examiner, we wouldn't be back here, wasting the committee's time. So that's a little bit of background in terms of why we're back. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, if that addresses your question. I've got a couple more things I'd like to say, but I just want to pause there for a moment.
Yeah, because that's the important one. So it looks like, why did, so that was in 2018. So why did it take, just curious, why, you're not back here in 19, or why did it take another couple of years to come back with this? So the pool has not been built, right? Because you didn't build a pool because you didn't get permission to build a pool because of the second examiner. I guess
no, the pool has been built. The pool and the driveway has been built as built based on the August submission. That was always the plan. Oh, and the examiner, the second examiner, said, move forward with whatever you want to do. You may have to come back to committee to get these things approved. And on that basis, we move forward. So
that's why we're coming back here, because you've actually...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the context.
I guess this all happened because the first examiner got pregnant. Had a baby.
Yes, which is wonderful, but unfortunately caused delays.
Okay, so
if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple more.
Okay, go ahead.
I just have a couple more things I want to bring to your attention. So with respect to the pool, just for the benefit of the committee, the home is actually quite deeply set back from Kingsway Crescent. So we have a disproportionately large front yard and a very small rear yard. So we could have actually asked in our initial application to move the front of the house closer to Kingsway Crescent to the east, in line with the curve of the crescent. But frankly, we didn't want to make changes to the older existing street line, so we didn't do that. And in terms of corner lot bylaws, as it relates to pools, the side yard and rear yard setback requirements are quite onerous. And if this was not a corner lot, of course, this would not even be a variance. So I'm sure the committee members are all aware of that. I want to comment also that the backyard and the pool area is fully fenced with a wrought iron coated gate that automatically locks as it springs closed. So the pool is completely secure and safe with it in terms of access.
Okay, that goes.
If I may, just want to speak a little bit about the softscaping. So the rear yard, as I mentioned, is small. The side yard is very narrow. And that's really what's triggering the majority of the variances. And softscaping is obviously important in the concept of grading. So I just want to spend a little bit of time there. The grading on this project is actually quite unique and frankly excellent. The entire property, and then to the south from the rear to the front of the yard. So in terms of grading and water flow, it really is quite exceptional. We've also installed weeping drains between the home to the south and us, and that brings water to some 30 feet ahead of both the homes, right into my emerald cedar bed. The north side yard, as I mentioned, we only have 4 feet, and that was actually built on the exact same northing as the previous home. And so we put a walkway there because that's our main entry and exit from the backyard. But I want to note, just for the committee's attention, that we've also installed well over 10 feet of new grass along the entire north side of the property. It's city property, but we've actually installed brand new sod and trees and plants, which allows for drainage as well as fresh greenscape.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Wrap up.
I just, if I may, one more minute just on the driveway. This is very important, sir. In terms of your driveway, so first of all, this is not a typical corner lot. We have 3 streets that are intersecting in a curve. So we have Queen Anne running west and east, curving to the southeast to Kingsway Crescent. We have Walford, which runs north-south into Queen Anne. And then we have Kingsway Crescent, obviously running north-south and then curving to the northeast. And frankly, I relocated the driveway from where it was previously as a matter of safety. So the original driveway was a dangerous arch, which had access from Queen Anne and Walford, as well as Kingsway Crescent and Queen Anne. And in terms of the new driveway, I just want to be clear that it's identical to the location of the original plan, which was August 2018. And it's been supported by transportation in their April 26, 21 opinion and report, as well as their July 25th, 2018 report. And we are some 30 feet away from the stop sign right at the corner of Queen Anne and Kingsway Crescent, which is a curved intersection. And there's a 75 feet wide triangle of paved road, resulting in absolutely clear visibility, no blind corners in all directions. So I'll pause there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perez. So I see that the speaker, we have one neighbor of 42 right next door. I don't know if there's a 44, so 2 doors away, unless there is no 44. We'll hear about that. And the letters we have are from 24 Queen Anne Road. Like I said, we have a letter from each of 2 spouses. So we'll go over to Bruce Wither from 42 Kingsway Crescent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Wither, and I live at 42 Kingsway Crescent, 2 doors down from 46.
So there is a 44. There's a 44 in between.
There is a 44, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and he's quite upset with this as well. I'm surprised that he hasn't filed a letter on this case, particularly because Mr. President said that he wasn't going to move his house forward towards the street. Of course he did, and it's about 10 feet forward, which is what he said. He did move it forward, he did, and it's blinding 44 Kingsway Crescent, who's extremely upset about it. Anyway, the applicant, Maria D'Amato, is the wife of Ian Perez, as he explained, but he's been the active party involved in the 3 committee of adjustments related to this case at 46 Kingsway Crescent. Mr. Perez is new to the neighborhood. I didn't know he was somewhere in the neighborhood. We have never run across him in my 30 years here. And he bought the property in 2018, and since then demolishing the house and building a new one. I'm opposing this committee of adjustment application because we're supposed to be here to discuss the minor variances requested to allow the installation of the pool and the building of the driveway. In fact, the applicant built both already over a year ago with no approval to do so from the committee of adjustment, in flagrant violation of the bylaws. He's showing contempt for you, the panel, and the minor variance process by pretending to submit this application for minor variances involved with the pool and the driveway when they've already been built. And his comments, of course, is all hearsay, but nothing approved officially. With this application, he is asking you to condone this behavior, which is at the very heart of why we have the Committee of Adjustment in the first place, to prevent this kind of abuse. This was no accident. It was all premeditated. He knew what he was doing by avoiding the Committee of Adjustment bylaws. All 5 bylaws in this application have already been violated. How did we get here? It started with Mr. Perez's initial request for 7 variances at the Committee of Adjustment on August the 2nd, 2018, to build his house. 6 of those variances dealt with the building itself, but the 7th was the same request for a variance that we see today in this application, Section 10584, Bylaw 569-213, which states that vehicle access to the parking space must be from a flanking street, Queen Anne, and not from a major street, Kingsway Crescent. Of course, this is where he put the driveway off of the major street. Well, this application was not approved, but deferred to the next Committee of Adjustment meeting, September 27th, 2018. In this Committee of Adjustment, Mr. Perez dropped the request for the street variance, and the application was approved. He obviously was told that his application would again be deferred if he included a request for the street variance. He was now ready to build and illegally proceeded to do exactly what had not been approved. He built the driveway off Kingsway Crescent. And not only that, he installed the pool, which he also knew was illegal and not improved. So here we are today at the 3rd Committee of Adjustment, with him asking us to approve these violations, not discuss them, which is the purpose of these hearings. He is asking us at this Committee of Adjustment to condone his behavior for his violation of the pool and street variances. I'm hoping the panel rejects this application, fines this individual for his behavior, and forces him to remove or meet the variances for soft landscaping where the pool is now, and move the vehicle access from Kingsway Crescent to Queen Anne. I'm not certain how the street access qualifies as a minor variance. It's a bylaw in itself. There's no compromising position. Access must be from a flanking street, not a fronting street. There's no gray area here. And this bylaw is even more important today because it ensures the safety from cars traveling on Kingsway Crescent and having to make a sharp left turn at Queen Anne to continue down the street rather than ending up on the property of 46 Kingsway Crescent, where his children play basketball on the very driveway that shouldn't be there. Mr. Perez is aware of this risk because he has built a retaining wall alongside the driveway to prevent cars from accessing that portion of the lawn. But I think it is unconscionable that this does not provide any protection to those on the driveway, either playing basketball or accessing their vehicles. And moving to the driveway to Queen Anne is urgent because there will be approximately 1,000 new condos and townhouses being built and or approved to be built along Dundas between Humber River and Royal York Road, which will increase traffic exponentially along Kingsway Crescent. As for the pool, Mr. Perez is the architect of his own problem. He built a monster home far exceeding the bylaws, but it was approved, that's fine, which in turn left no space for a pool in the backyard. You can have one or the other, Mr. Perez, but he wants both. The variances requested for the pool are clearly not minor. The required side yard setback is 4.5 meters. His request is 1.18 meters. The minimum rear yard setback, 3.00 meters. His request, 0.9 meters. The minimum side yard soft landscaping, 75%. He's requesting 32%. With these gross discrepancies, you can see why Mr. Perez just built the pool without going to the Committee of Adjustment for approval. He is now betting that since he has already built the pool, we won't have the authority or will to have him take it out. Totally bully tactics. And the same he is using for the driveway. The solution, at the next Committee of Adjustment meeting, he should put the driveway where the pool is now. Problem solved. This case has created a tremendous amount of attention in our neighborhood, and I can't stress enough how important your decision and comments will be. You might not see as much written opposition, but the notice of this hearing only reached the community at the end of last week. And after mentioning the delay to add them on registration, he admitted they were having postal problems and increased the time to mail the notices before the hearings. So I think it's fairly self-evident that we have gross violations to the process from Mr. Perez. He's giving you lots of window dressing as to putting in trees, etc. But the basis of this application is total violation.
Okay.
He's already done it.
You could wrap up, Mr.
And
Wither?
now he's coming back.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Could you wrap up, please?
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm wrapping up. That's it. Nope. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Wither before we go back to Mr. Perez for rebuttal? No? Okay. Mr. Perez,
Yep, thank you,
your
Mr.
opportunity to
Chairman.
respond to your the neighbors' concerns and what the neighbors had to say.
Yes, so first of all, this individual has been working with Peter Marzinski from PhD Design for years, creating unnecessary objections to just about every neighborhood project.
Yeah, anyway, let's just hear about his objection to this project.
Well, so it's important in context, Mr. Chairman, because he's the reason, along with Peter Marzinski, why my meeting was deferred in August 2018.
Yeah, I saw
And
the letter.
yeah, so he's the one who came with opposition. He actually came to the next meeting because clearly, he feels he has a view. And I would just comment to the committee that he has actually uttered bodily threats to individuals in the neighborhood.
Sir, let's deal with the
And
planning
he did the
issues
same
here,
to
please,
myself.
sir. Let's deal with the planning issues. If you heard my outs, we deal with planning issues. We don't deal with issues between neighbors. But
Sure.
yeah,
So
you
I
said- you
understand,
did
Mr.
say in your
Chairman, but
letter
there's a
that
police report on
PhD
file about uttering a bodily threat. So
Okay.
that's the context of this individual. Okay, he's the bully. He actually tries to coerce people and sort of give them trouble at committee. I just want the committee to understand that's the
Yeah,
context.
sir,
Mr.
really,
Chairman, I did
it's not
not.
appropriate to you to make personal aspersions at one of the neighbors. But I'm just saying, and I brought it up, I'd like you to respond. You did make the changes. You agreed to the changes made by the second examiner. You did mention that
Right,
Peter's.
so-
You didn't mention the other in your letter that this gentleman at 42. You mentioned Peter Marzinski, PhD
Yes.
Design. I don't know if he was retained by him or he was also a neighbor in terms of your first deferral, August
He's-
2018.
Yeah.
But we can't start looking back at deferrals in 2018. You had your hearing, you got a decision, you built, and now we are where we are. So that's where we stand today.
As I said, Mr. Chairman, the second examiner made it clear to us that we should proceed on our plan. They were not able to issue a permit unless the changes were made with the driveway, at least on the plans of the backyard. We proceeded on that basis. We followed the instructions of the second examiner. So this notion of we intentionally didn't follow the approvals is nonsense. That's not at all what happened.
You and your I don't know if you had an agent, a professional agent with you at that time, but you agreed to proceed on that basis. No one forced you to do anything. You proceeded on that basis. You could have appealed the other way or get a deferral to look at it, but you decided to go on proceed on one basis. So, we heard from the neighbor. You have a chance to rebut what he had to say without making comments about that he's a bully or he opposes every application on the street. That's not constructive. So,
Right. So in terms of defense, Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned, at no point was I trying to be in any kind of violation of any bylaws. The plans that were submitted in August, as I mentioned, as reviewed and confirmed in terms of variances by the first examiner, were all passed. They were submitted to committee for approval. They were delayed as a result of PhD, who happens to be a neighbor as well, and Bruce, who happened to be at that meeting, contesting it and trying to get a deferral. And as I mentioned, the person went on maternity leave. The second examiner was brought in. A second set of variances were brought in. And as I mentioned, we were stuck in a situation where they said, make the changes, I'm not going to bend. And I was stuck in a situation where I'm going to have another year and a half of carrying costs to get the house built. On that basis, we moved forward on the original plans, which was not faced with any opposition at the time.
Okay. Anyway, anyone else have any questions for either Mr. Wither or the applicant? Or is someone ready to, Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, just a question. Mr. Fraser, you built, I guess, in accordance with any building permit that would have been issued, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Palmer.
Okay, and that included the garage in the location that it currently is?
Yes, correct. That was on the plans that were approved. Yes.
Okay, so just maybe a comment for staff. It appears that a garage was built fronting onto Kingsway Crescent, not onto the side street. So I guess the driveway would have had to wrap around, go around a curve.
Through you, Mr.
It just
Chair.
seems,
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have a copy of his building permit application. I don't know how we got to where we are now, but we will look into it while you're considering this matter.
Yeah, Mr. Palmer, if I could just add a comment. The garage was actually placed where it was because it was always planned to put the driveway on the front, as I mentioned, as we were discussing with the second examiner. That was always the plan. So there was no plan to come in from the side. In fact, there's no room to come from the flanking street and around the front of the house. And that driveway would be enormous to come to that garage as it was approved by committee.
Since it appears we've got a little bit of time here, I'd just like to, I'm probably more interested in the safety aspect of this rather than the bylaw. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Perez can talk a little bit more about the safety aspects of what the neighbor brought up.
Thank you, Ms. Alderson. So in terms of the safety issue, I'll just sort of lay the property out for you a little bit. If the driveway was to be put into the backyard from the flanking street, there's actually 15-foot high cedars that are 3 foot deep along the entire side of the property. So backing out of that flanking driveway would actually be much more dangerous than where it is right now. So that's sort of comment number one. The corner of Walford and Queen Anne is a T intersection. And because there's a house right on Queen Anne on the northwest corner, it's actually a blind corner. So that would be within about 20 feet of the flanking driveway from the side street, which in this case happens to be Queen Anne. So that would, putting the driveway in the back was already a safety issue. Now, when you actually look at where the driveway was put, it's within about 30 feet from a stop sign where Queen Anne and Kingsway Crescent meet. And rather than being a T intersection, it's really like a Y intersection. Right. And as you're coming across Queen Anne, if you actually look at Kingsway Crescent, there's literally like a 75-foot triangle of space, which is wide open. There's absolutely zero blind spots when you're coming across Queen Anne, trying to turn right or left on Kingsway Crescent. And there are zero blind spots when you're coming across Kingsway Crescent to either turn left on Queen Anne or to continue northeast along Kingsway Crescent. In terms of visibility, the location of the driveway honestly doesn't get better. And that's the reason I suspect why transportation supports and continues to support the location of the driveway. Putting the driveway in the back in this situation, because of you multiple streets and curved streets, are actually creating more of a safety issue than where the driveway is located.
Okay. Anyway, we have, I believe, transportation had originally wanted a deferral to address access, and then in the additional materials with last-minute materials, they said they had instead conditions of approval. But it doesn't. It still goes back to the original I still look at the same paragraph in Mr. Perez's or Ms. D'Amato's letter that says they forced us to accept, he says my architect made plans and that the planner said they weren't going to budge. So these changes included placing the driveway in the rear yard from the flanking street, thereby forcing the removal of the pool. So that's what you agreed to back in September 2018. And as the neighbor said, and then you went and just built the pool and put the driveway at the front of the house. The plans did show an unexcavated area. Mr. Carvalino just pulled out the building, which we normally wouldn't refer to those plans in a hearing like this, but it does show the driveway area on the flanking street. Mr. Carvalino, can you just summarize what you discovered?
It showed a driveway off of the flanking side. I don't know, maybe Mr. Perez can speak to that.
And at the front, it showed unexcavated where the... Right. Okay. Mr. Perez?
Sorry, I didn't hear that
back and
last
forth,
comment.
but this is, we're trying to get the right result here. So if you have, we'll give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Yeah, again, Mr. Chairman, we were following the instructions of the second examiner. And as I mentioned, you're right, the plans were changed. With the driveway on the plans put on the flanking street, you couldn't have a pool underneath it, so the pool had to be removed.
Anyway, your plans show the driveway on the flanking street. Anyway, let's take it into committee now, so no other comments unless you're asked a direct question. Committee members, we've spent a lot of time on this application, and it's time to bring it into committee to make a motion, have a motion on this application.
I'm prepared to make a motion. Something smells here, but I have to look at the application before me and the variances requested. They appear to meet the 4 tests in the Planning Act and are minor in nature. I'm prepared to move for approval, subject to the transportation and works conditions and the forestry condition for a city tree permit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palmer. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I'd like to second that motion. I'm fairly confident that the flanking street is not a typical flanking street in that there seems to be 2 flanking streets in question. And I think it might be, in fact, more dangerous to have a driveway on that side. So I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, the motion carries 4-1. I am opposed. The application is granted. Okay, our next application is item number 20, 19 Cowley Avenue. It's an application for a new swimming pool in the rear yard, and we're 3 letters of support, and that's all we have. The applicant for this application is Diana Corsi, agent, and there's no other speakers registered. Diana Corsi?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
We have
Hi,
your
it's Carlos Corsi,
application.
sorry.
It's for a swimming pool in the rear yard. There are 2 variances, and we have no comments from city departments or area neighbors. We just have 3 letters of support. We do have 3 letters of support from neighbors. Is there anything you'd like to add, or should I'll just see if committee members have any questions? There's no one here in opposition.
No.
Okay, so you want to just state your name and address for the record?
Sure. It's Diana Corsi. My business address is 74 McDonnell Crescent in Brantford, Ontario.
Okay, so unless there's anything to add, why don't I just see if committee members have any questions for you with respect to this pool? Committee members, any questions for the agent or someone ready to make a motion? two small variances.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I find the variances requested to meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that motion. Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Diana Corsi. You have your approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is item number 2126 Firestone Road. And this is an application for a constructed 2-story south side addition and a new attached garage. There is one variance, the floor space index. We have one letter of opposition from number 28, a 5-page letter dealing with environmental assessment, and then in the additional materials, another submission by the same speaker. So we'll hear first from the agent, and then we have the neighbors from 28 who's written in 2 letters, and the neighbor from 35 Firestone. So Nicole Parr is the agent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you had said, we're asking for one variance. We signed a letter to the effect that it's just an addition for single family use. It's essentially just a small living space on top of what will become a carport. You know, I'm not sure if I should comment on the letter yet or wait for the neighbor to speak.
Yeah, we have that neighbor who's written in 2 letters. And then we have another neighbor that we don't know what their concern is. But in terms of, let's hear from the first neighbor. I'm going to point out to that neighbor that we deal with the Planning Act, not with the Environmental Protection Act or assessments. We don't do environmental assessments on these properties, but that seems to be what the concerns in the letter are, even though the only variance before us really is the floor space index.
Yeah.
We're only over by about, I don't know, 25 square meters or something. But in any event, everyone's entitled to have their say. So let's hear from that neighbor, and the other neighbor, you'll have a chance to respond.
Thank you.
Okay, is Anne-Marie Zagrossi there?
Yes, I am. My name is Anne-Marie Zagrossi, and I live at 28 Firestone. I am neighbors on the south side,
Yeah,
so I'm
you're right
directly
next door, right?
impacted.
You're right next
Yeah.
door.
So,
Okay. So
yep.
as you know, there's
So I
only
think,
there's one variance here of FSI, and your concerns, well, you know, they seem to be related to environmental issues.
Yeah.
So
It's okay. If you don't mind, I prepared it as going through the different, the 4 different points that you've offered. So so the variance request is minor, and I understand that it's minor in building, but to us it's not minor. It'll directly impact on my family's daily activities and well-being during the construction phase. It will also surely impact the erosion and water pooling issues on the property that have been highlighted in my letter. When we talk about a proposal as being desirable for the appropriate development, I want to just bring up the fact that I don't think anyone who has bought a bungalow in Etobicoke would find living next door to a multi-unit dwelling desirable. We came to this area for the space between the houses, which is going to be affected by the variance. And we also came here for privacy, and now I have a building hovering over us. And this is not desirable, I don't think, for anyone. And then now as I walk out of my front door every day, I get to see a brick or stucco wall. When we look at the general intent and the purpose of the city zoning code and the bylaws that have to be maintained, the neighbors own 3 cars and a trailer, and they have existing renters in the basement who also through bylaw have to have a parking space. So you are now taking some of that area away because the garage will now be impacted. So you are taking so that where are those cars going? The parking on the street bylaw states that you're only allowed to have that on for 3 hours, which they tend to do anyways because shuffling cars is really hard. So there's always cars on the street, which makes it a safety impact. We have a lot of kids in the neighborhood who like to play tennis on the street, ride their bikes. And so there's a real big safety issue. I have 2 kids of my own, and that is a concern for me. The other aspect is the cherry tree that will be directly impacted because it is in line. The crown of the tree will actually be impacted. And in the past, the pruning was not, proper pruning practice was not, because it overhangs onto their property, it was not properly done. And last year we did not have any fruit on the tree because of the pruning practice that was not properly done. And then also because we have this tree, there has been no arborist report which has been recommended in the application process or a commitment to a TPZ, because this like all trees that are in a 6-meter radius of the proposed build, this is making me concerned about the assurance that this tree will be protected. And lastly, the intent and purpose of the original plan is that it states that this is going to be used as a single family detached dwelling. Already there are renters in the basement, and now they're creating a standalone living space. So there'll be 3 different living spaces in this house. And if you look at that, the variance, which we are talking about, only holds the stairs, the separate staircase to go up. So taking that variance away will not only give us back some of that space between the houses, but it will also in the future prevent people from renting out those 2 areas and making this should be a single household into a multi apartment complex. And I just want to say that the bylaws that are in place to protect all members of our community, and that they have been carefully developed by experts within the City of Toronto and approved by our elected officials that carefully consider all aspects of the matter. As a longstanding member of Etobicoke, I believe in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker before we move on to the next speaker? Okay. Next speaker is 35 Firestone Road, Astrid Castro.
Hi, this is Astrid from 35 Firestone Road. For me, it was just more, again, an understanding on the extension of what Emery was just saying, understanding the parking and how that was going to be affecting the community, our neighbors, basically. Yes, again, where are all the cars going to go as this construction occurs? We wanted to understand that. So I'd like a little more clarity, and that's why I'm sitting in here.
Okay, so if during construction is not something we deal with, I don't know if, everyone, when there's houses,
No,
obviously
I'm
it's
talking about
disruption,
where the
or afterwards? After
No,
it's
no,
built?
afterwards. Again, it was
Okay.
just understanding how the parking
Right.
is going
Okay,
to
I just
occur.
point out there is
with
no
all-
there is no parking variance, but perhaps the agent can respond, but I just would point out there is no parking variance here. It's not that there's any
Mhm.
deficiency for parking. And also there is,
Yeah.
if you're listening in, almost half the applications have comments from urban forestry. And this one doesn't have any
Yes.
urban forestry comments. So I don't know.
No,
what
no,
that
it was
means.
more just about, again, for me, I wanted to understand
Yeah,
that. so.
okay. So now we'll go back to Nicole Parr, the agent, to respond to the concerns of the neighbors.
Okay, hi. So thank you guys for your comments. I wanted to touch on a couple things. One was for the cherry tree. The cherry tree is 20 centimeters in diameter, and it's not a bylaw protected tree. And that's the reason why A, it wasn't flagged for urban forestry in our application, and B, why there's not that requirement to have the TPZ. My client is very willing to work with Ms. Zagrosi and any sort of private civil thing that they can work out for that tree, they will do so. Another issue was the grading and the pool water. It'll be to Ms. Zagrossi's benefit because we have to do an updated grading plan based on when we do building permit application. So the issue of groundwater and all of that will be even better for her because we'll have to update everything. Then there was the issue of the parking. So I just wanted to share my screen if that's possible.
It's not, hi, it's not possible to share your screen, but if there's material in the file, I can pull it up.
Oh, yes, please. If you don't mind pulling up the plans.
Okay, 1 second.
Thank you very much. And just A03 would be perfect. So this is the first floor, and what's happening is there's actually a carport that's being built. So the issue of parking is we're actually creating an extra, not a spot, but they can park inside there. And then the addition is the top portion of it. So there's not anything, it's actually beneficial for them because we're going to have an extra spot for parking. And as mentioned, we don't have a parking variance. We're only here just to talk about the one. So I think this might answer, I'm sorry, Astrid, I don't know your last name, but your question about parking, this drawing would address that.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Okay. Anyone have any follow-up last-minute questions for either the agent or the two neighbors, or is someone ready to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I find this application for a single variance to build a house 51 odd square meters larger than permitted by zoning to be in keeping with the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I move approval unconditionally.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Second for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Ruddick, thank you. All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you. Thank you, agent, and thank you, neighbors. Thank you. Okay, the next application is item number 22, 111 the Kingsway. It's an application for a rear yard deck. There are 2 variances and 1 letter of support from 55 Strath Avenue and no comments from city departments or other area residents with concerns or in opposition. The speaker is Kenneth Morris or Vanessa Morris, the owners of the property.
Hi there, it's Kenneth Morris.
Welcome, sir.
Yes, we bought this house about 6 months ago. All we're doing is replacing the deck exactly as it was, and we just wanted to go through the correct process.
Of course. Okay, so I don't think we need a presentation on this. It's very straightforward, 2 very minor variances, and no concerns by anyone. Committee members, is someone ready to make a motion?
To make a motion to accept this variance application, find its minor nature and consistent with the 4 tests set out in the Planning Act.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. Seconder. Laura Alderson, all in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application, item number 23, 51 Farnsworth Drive. It's an application to construct a new north side attached garage with a 2nd-story addition and a 1-story rear addition. There again is only 1 variance here. It's the side yard setback of 1.8. Instead, it's 1.2, so a 0.6 deficiency on the north side. Again, we have no objection from 49. I don't know, I assume that's the side that's affected. Nothing else, no comments from city departments or other area neighbors, and the speaker is Daniela Varney, the owner of the property.
Hello.
Yeah, we do have urban forestry requesting condition number 2. Welcome. Very straightforward application, one small variance, no one with any concerns. So is there anything you'd like to add before I see if committee members have any questions for you or if someone's ready to make a motion? Anything you'd like to tell us?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, one of our easiest ones of the day, one variance and nobody with any concerns.
Mr.
I'll
Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Taylor?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Palmer. I find the requested variance meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval subject to urban forestry condition number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Ms. Varney.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Okay, after a few easy peasy applications, the next one we have a lot of speakers on, 11 Arcadian Circle. We have a revised notice page highlighted to show the changes. There were 4 variances. There's now 2, and one of them has been reduced of those, as you can see if we get the notice sheet up on the wall. This is a detached dwelling with an attached garage. We have a covering letter, supplemental material. We have a streetscape. We have the Long Branch character guidelines checklist. We have 5 letters of support, 4 letters of opposition. And we have a planning report for information, which advises that there are no further concerns following, I guess, the revisions that were made. And I had a note here of the 4 letters of opposition. I believe that at least 3 of them are from the Long Branch Association. So let's hear. The agent is Sean Galbraith, and we have a number of people registered to speak. 6 neighbors scheduled to speak. The issue is when we're in a non-virtual world, there would be the opportunity, we were just discussing this is a problem with the virtual world, for people to meet out in the hallway either together with the other side or even just as a group of neighbors to appoint spokespeople or decide who's speaking on what. But let's start off with the applicant and we'll see as we proceed. There isn't a need, not everyone has to speak. If someone else has already covered your points, you don't have to necessarily speak on that. And we do have, I believe, 2 people from the Long Branch Association. So let's open it up to Mr. Galbraith to make a presentation on this application.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Mr. Galbraith.
Hello again. I'm Sean Galbraith. I'm a planner here on behalf of the application. It's a fairly straightforward one, I think. Normally, this would be considered just a second floor top-up, but we're not able to save 50% of the walls, so it's considered a new build. The 2-story building is using the existing footprint of the existing house and is not being expanded upon. So it's effectively just a 2-story kind of top-up. The original application had square footage above the garage. That has been removed, which reduced the FSI to the 0.49. The height of the main walls was reduced, and there's no variance for the height of the structure itself. And the deck was made a little bit shallower, and that removed the deck variance. So now those items both fully comply with the bylaw. The floor height is a 2-centimeter variance, and it's the existing first floor of the house that is being reused. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I think the application is fairly straightforward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Galbraith. Okay, I guess there's no spokesperson, so I guess we just have to start off with the first speaker and go on. I don't think there's any issue. Normally we have 2 speakers from Long Branch, 1 speaking about trees. I don't see any urban forestry condition on this, unless I missed it. Anyway, the first speaker is, oh, it looks like the owner's here available for questions, so we don't need to hear from that person. Marvin Viegas from 11 28th Street.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Marvin Viegas. I'm here with my wife, Lauren Vanderlinden, the owners of 11 28th Street, which is to the west of the 11 Arcadian Circle matter that we're speaking about.
Yep.
I wondered if the document I submitted could be brought up. I just have a few pictures, and I should be done in about a minute and a half.
Okay, staff.
Thank you.
Do we have Mr. Here it comes.
And great. So there's three separate points that we'll bring up. The first one is the windows in the second story stairwell. We have concerns about the west-facing window in the second story stairwell is large and extends down from the floor to the level landing. Basically a full window there. The occupants can look directly into our kitchen from that position, and that's supported by I guess picture number 1 shows you what we look at looking at that opening, and number 2, the opposite side. But the most important picture is number 3, which shows the proximity to the west wall of 11 Arcadian, and approximately where that the bottom of that window would be. So in light of privacy, we would just ask that window be moved to head height and be horizontal to match the window that is on the main floor. Has the same configuration, which is horizontal and high up on the wall. So that's the first one there.
Yep. Okay, so your request, have you spoken at all to your neighbor or to Mr. Galbraith about that, or this is the first time this has been raised?
I have not. I have not, no.
Okay. Just
Thank you.
curious. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Viegas?
There's more.
Oh, you're not finished?
I'm not finished yet.
Okay,
no.
go ahead. Sorry, so you said you were going to be brief, so I thought you were done.
Yeah, 2 more brief points. The second objection we have here is the second story master ensuite. The windows for the master ensuite look directly onto our backyard, and that's our deck, our entertainment area, our barbecue, and our side entrance, and those are supported by pictures number 7, 8, 9, and 10. And that's where the second story would appear. And so that certainly is, given that that's a bathroom, there's alternate ways to get light there. This also is in line as we look, our request here to remove those windows takes into account certainly a concession we made in 2014 when we were building our second story, which you can see there was built in and when this came before Committee of Adjustment, we certainly were very accommodating to the request by the owner, Jane Beasley, not to position windows in the exact same areas on our property. So we have no east-facing windows at all on our second story addition, facing into principally her backyard. We totally agreed in the name of privacy, parity, and equity. And certainly this is an identical request, and we don't think it's really unfair there. So that's the second point. And then the third one, if you keep scrolling down, has to do with downspouts. The picture on the left is 11 Arcadian Circle. The picture on the right is 11 28th Street. You will notice that my property, 11 28th Street, is positioned lower. So we would ask, in line with the picture on the left, that for 11 Arcadian, that the downspouts be positioned to discharge to the north and to the south, where there's plenty of room to discharge that water. Discharging in the middle of the properties there would compromise my property being lower. And as you can see the picture on the right, my downspouts lead to the north and to the south, thereby certainly having courtesy for any water contamination on 11 Arcadia. I think all my requests are fairly reasonable and fairly in line with what previous requests were from 11 Arcadia during our bill. I think they're fair. They're in the spirit of neighborhoodliness, respect, and certainly parity and equity. That's all I have, and I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to present today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vegas. Mr. Galbraith is listening, and I'll have a chance to respond to that. Next speaker is Walter Sawzak at 815 Arcadian Circle. Looks like 2 doors away.
Hi there. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. It's Sawchuck, but I'll give you credit. I'll give you a 10 out of 10 for coming close.
9 out of 10.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to present. Mr. Chair, committee, I have a couple of things, and they all roll back to the first variance. Happens to be all with the size of the build itself. I realize that it's been modified to be a little smaller. It's still a 0.5 build. But with respect to the more personal things to me, I'm going to speak in terms of the privacy and light which will be affected on my side of the property. Just to be clear, I'm the next door neighbor to number 11 on the east side. So the numbers are a little bit odd in our.
So there is no number 13. There's no.
No. I would have likely have been the lucky person if there were, but at any rate, a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to speak to a couple of things that I've already put on my document. If you wish to bring that up for clarity, that's great. But you know, having said that, I will bring up the more important things. I'm looking at essentially the eastern elevation windows. And if you look at those eastern elevation windows, the first thing, okay, we'll go to the first thing there, which is there's a door that's coming into our side of the property, which again is on the eastern side. And that door actually looks like it's rolling into the basement only. There's already access, and there are multiple number of entry points into the house. So basically what you have is you have a doorway on the west side, which goes both up and down. And so this east side doorway, of which there's not one today, only appears to go into a basement and measures out to be 4.5 feet wide. So my concern about that doorway is it's rather odd that it would be placed there, and it doesn't seem to show a specific purpose, and perhaps I need some clarity to better understand why that would be the only entry point that's new that happens to be entering into a spot that is a basement that isn't finished. So that's one of my objections. The other objection, if you go down the list, it's windows. I've circled the number of windows on this build. And so the primary ones are the three at the bottom, which will be on the garage. And again, this is the modified photo with the garage being reduced. On the second floor, and of course on the further south window, which is the largest one, which is off the master bedroom. Each and every one of these bedrooms, all these rooms, have both north and south exposure to proper windows. So from a perspective of privacy and from a perspective of trying to understand why these windows would be there when there's ample light on the north and the south side of the building, I have an objection to those specific windows, and most importantly, the one on the south side, the big one. In addition to that, we have one more thing, and I think Mr. Galbraith mentioned that there was no real appreciable change. Those are pictures that show the front, the north and the south windows as they're planned for the light on the top floor, the second floor of that build, for the 2 bedrooms. And again, there's also a window and a doorway on the back side of the garage, which provides ample light. Bearing in mind that we are southern exposed on the side you're looking at the moment. All right. Additionally, the garage. Interesting story on the garage. The garage will be lengthened, so I think as far as footprint goes, we're not totally correct in that assumption. The blue section there gives you about 4.5 feet of garage, which is going to come forward vis-a-vis northward. So my house being to that side, the offset of the property completely changes. What that does for me is I have bedrooms on that side of my property. I also have home offices. What ultimately happens is that light, the natural light, the sunlight, etc., gets just virtually squatted right out by the virtue of that additional build. Now, having said that, I don't know what the solution would be. The garage has been extended. The plan is to extend the garage in the rear as well. And I see that there still would be ample room to accommodate that northern expansion to the south. If that were done, for instance, I think my idea of trying to get my light and trying to get that offset of the street to where it is today, and one of the reasons why I bought the property back in 1989 with my wife, would probably be back to what would be known as status quo. So those are the main issues. I just wanted to just have a word on a couple of things that are sort of dear to me. And I go back to probably the sentimental part of buying this
Sir, I'm going to
property.
have to ask you to sort of wrap up because you just reached the 5-minute mark and we have a lot of speakers on
Okay.
this. Thank you.
Got it. All right. So basically, at the end of the day, we're worried about the privacy element, people walking on that side of the property, which is not a concern today and hasn't been since we've been here since '89. The garage can be modified perhaps. The windows, I'm not in favor of. And of course, the doorway that goes into the basement are also a concern. And that pretty much wraps it up for me.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for this neighbor before we move on to the next? Okay, and the next speaker is Andy Scholes of 12 Jasmine. I assume he's speaking as a neighbor, not on behalf this time of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association.
Yeah, I'm speaking as a resident.
Okay, you're in the notification within the area, 12 Jasmine.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
My name is Andy Scholes. I live at 12 Jasmine Avenue, Long Branch. Lived here for about 25 years. My home is not far from Arcadian Circle, 11 Arcadian Circle. I can see it from my front window. I'm here to speak to oppose this planned build because it is an overbuild, something that is creeping into our neighborhood and is threatening the character of our community. I do note that the revised plan somewhat eliminated two of the variances as the presenter outlined. However, his reduction to FSI of 0.497 will still allow a house about 3,121 square feet. That's a very large house, 1,000 square feet more than what's allowed in the official plan, extra 85 square meters for the metric. Immediate neighbors on either side shared their concerns about the loss of privacy due to overlook, and I'm more concerned that the house is going to be too large and is being built in my neighborhood. As a committee of adjustment, the term adjustment suggests the application might be asking for a 10 to 15% increase in FSI or encroaching on setback on one of the lot lines for a foot or so. The applicant proposes to build a home that's 142% of the FSI prescribed by the official plan. It is more than a little likely this plan to build this home will be with the beefed up FSI won't be developed by this applicant but sold to someone else to do the build. It has happened a number of times to cases presented at the COA in my area. To me, the larger distance between the original applicant and the final builder, there's an increased likelihood that the plans will be altered or trees destroyed to the detriment of our neighborhood. However, who the final builder might be is something beyond the scope of this committee. What is within your realm is to protect the neighborhood by insisting the applicants adhere more closely to the zoning bylaws set out in the official plan and interpreted in practical terms in the Long Branch Neighborhood Character Guidelines. It is not the people of Long Branch that are against development. Most of us know that development is happening and the renewal of some of the housing is a good thing. It is unwarranted when builders describe my neighbors as NIMBYs, frozen in time, or not wanting any building that's not exactly the same as the homes on the street. There's a good case to be made that some of our housing needs a redesign or renewal. However, we would hope that more concern for the character of our Long Branch neighborhood enter into the design of these new homes. The character can be found in the two documents I mentioned earlier, the official plan and the Long Branch Neighborhood Character Guidelines. I would hope this Committee of Adjustment is interested in building better neighborhoods that recognize and enhance the character of our neighborhood. This plan can certainly be improved to ensure that the neighborhood character is not threatened or destroyed. I would request that the committee today defer this application, or if that's not possible, refuse the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scholes. Next speaker is Tara Neal McNally of 15 Elton Crescent.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to be quite brief. Hopefully I adhere to that.
I have built a house in the neighborhood. I believe that a lot of the older housing stock is in need of repair or reconstruction. Especially with the changes that the applicant has made, I have no objections to this. I do like the idea of shifting that garage back that one of the gentlemen suggested earlier to preserve his light. But other than that, I think this house is a good idea for the neighborhood, and it's going to increase the overall value and aesthetics of the street.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last speaker is Christine Mercado from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association.
Good afternoon. Could I get my letter put up, please? And if you could just start from the last page, it'll probably just flow a little bit better that way. Okay, too far. Guidelines, perfect. Thank you. So my name is Christy Mercado. I'm the chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to speak on the broader context. So at this point in time, the Neighborhood Association actually opposes the 0.50. We do acknowledge the reduction in FSI, and we also share Ms. McNally's statement with regards to moving the garage back to the rear to be more in line with the front wall, which would be compliant with the character guidelines. So I've pulled up just an excerpt from the building heights of the Long Branch Neighborhood Character Guidelines, and just highlighted some important statements. And the whole point of this height guideline, even there's no variance, it's to maintain a similar scale between new and old, and to access natural daylight. So, and the reason for this is to fit an appropriate scale house in an existing neighborhood that was established in 1910. So if you can go to the next page, please. Moving backwards, thank you. This is based on policy 4.1.5C, and I hope you can read that policy document. Thank you. It's prevailing heights, massing, scale, and density and dwelling type of nearby residential properties. So that's in the official plan. If you can go to the next page, please. So with this in policy in mind, I did do a FSI analysis of the geographic neighborhood that's required by policy, and that includes 379 homes in the neighborhood. And only 20% exceed the FSI cap of 0.35. There are exceptions that are contained into 78 homes, but there's not really anything remarkable as far as lot area goes. And lot frontage is actually a little bit wider than our regular 50-foot lots. So with frontage, 222 lots are 15.24 meters. So when you look at the FSI relationship in the 0.35, that is intrinsic to our neighborhood character. And the policy also dictates that we look on the block. So if you can go to the next page, please. And it dictates, policy dictates that we go look at the houses on either side, the block and the block facing. And as you can see by the green, the 0.35 is prevailing. And looking at it even further, if you can go to the next page, please. You have to look at the character. So you've got the Arcadian circle on the south side where you've got modest homes. And then on the north side where you've got modest homes. And it also, and this 0.35 actually speaks to the look and feel of the neighborhood, where you've got a little bit of elbow room and a lot of room for mature tree canopies and landscaping. So if you go to the next page, please. You can see that there is the only exception on the street, which is 1128th Street, where it's actually a little bit bigger in FSI. But this is a compartmentalized house where it does step back and the massing isn't as absolute as what's being presented, even with the amended designs. And if you can go back to page one, page one. oh, sorry, yeah, page 2. So this is just a differentiation of the height differences between the adjacent properties and I just wanted to articulate that so the board could see this. Anyways, and if you can go to page 1, I'll just do a wrap up. So I do echo Mr. Chole's concerns with regard to protecting the 0.35 density in Long Branch. This is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Toronto, and the 0.35 does serve as a look and feel of the neighborhood. While we do support redevelopment. The 0.35 on a 50-foot lot is usually about 2,700 square feet, which is not oversized or unremarkable or a hardship for anyone. The 0.35 preserves the look and feel of the neighborhood, plantable space for large trees, and privacy for neighbors, as the other residents have stated. This look and feel was actually established in 1910 from the Healthier Homes campaign by Colonel Robbins, where the houses this was designed to be a neighborhood with undulating streets that are curved, and it was planned to showcase and preserve the trees, slow down the traffic, and exemplify an overall comfortable and
Can you try to wrap up, please?
in a residential
No, you're
community.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm at my 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I would ask that this FSI be reduced, and if you were to choose to approve it, is to consider some conditions with regards to the concerns of the adjacent neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Galbraith, ball's back into your court to respond to the concerns raised by the neighbors.
Thank you very much. So with regards to, and I hope I have the comments here, with regards to Mr. Villegas's concerns at 1128th Street, we are absolutely happy to work with him and make revisions to the windows that face his property. But that's no problem at all. We had emailed with him copies of the drawings, but we hadn't heard his concerns before today. But it's totally something that we can work with. Happy to do so. Let's see here. The next was regards to windows facing 15 Arcadian Court. Most of the windows that were identified were clear story windows, like on the garage. There's one larger window on the second floor, but that's set back around 9 meters from his house. It's way in the sort of the step back at the rear. So I don't consider that to be a significant imposition in terms of views or privacy regarding his property. With regards to the neighborhood design guidelines, staff has reviewed the project and has signed off on it. We made changes to the project specifically to address staff concerns regarding the design guidelines. And this is a neighborhood that has a large number of 2-story houses. This is not out of character for the neighborhood by any stretch in terms of its materiality, in terms of its height, which there's no variance for, or in terms of its built form. What else was there? With regards to trees, we're using the existing footprint of the house, so no trees will be impacted at all. I think that's a very positive thing. And as to the proposed FSI, if you were to refer to the LBNA's submission itself, it references 2 projects, 11 Shamrock at 0.49 and 83 27th Street at 0.62. The neighbor at 1128th has a higher FSI, and we're well below the average of the neighborhood and Arcadian Court itself at 0.56 in terms of approved variances. We think it's entirely appropriate in terms of its size, in terms of its appearance, and in terms of its context. And we would hope that you would approve it.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith. Any
Thank you.
questions for
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Galbraith, panel members, or for any of the neighbors for that matter? Or are we ready to bring it into committee for a motion? Yeah, there doesn't appear
It's
to
Mark.
be a... Sorry. Someone say something?
Is that open?
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, when I consider the important issue of impact in a residential situation like this, my primary considerations relate to side yards, rear yards, front yard, and height. This proposal does not offend any of those principles or bylaw requirements, and I find it quite appropriate and meeting all 4 tests under the Planning Act. So I move for approval unconditionally.
And
Thank you, Mr.
Neil
Palmer.
Palmer,
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Galbraith, and thank you, neighbors.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next application is item number 25, 8 Burford Road. Let me just get my completer. Oops. And we only have one speaker, Tony Diodati, on behalf of the applicant. We again have a revision page, which is always a good highlighted with changes. It always shows that this has been around a bit and there's been some changes made. So we have the revised notice. We had 6 variances. We now have 4, and the FSI has been reduced from 0.59 to 0.55. We have tree declaration planning. Has no further concerns following the revisions, and we have 4 letters of support. Mr. Diodati.
Yes, hello, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Okay, so it looks like you made some changes, I assume in response to planning concerns.
Yes,
we have
that's
revised
correct,
plans
yes.
and revised notice and all of those fun things. Very straightforward. There's no opposition and no concerns. Community planning is now satisfied. So let's just see if, I don't think we need a presentation, unless you'd like to add anything to bring to our attention. I'll just see if committee members have any questions for you. Was there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I have nothing further to add than from what you've described just now.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, panel members, any questions for the agent, or is someone ready for a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I find the variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval without conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Alderson, all in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Diodati.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, item number 26 is 23 Galewood Drive. Again, we have a revised notice page, which eliminates one of the 9 variances. So we now have 8 variances. It was the front porch platform encroaching into the front yard setback. So we have 9 variances left. We have an email from the applicant, which is referred to as a cover letter. Transportation has conditions of approval, and in the second batch of additional materials that we received late, we have the revised notice waiver, and we have a discussion with the planner about agreeing to reduce the height, which is not reflected in the plans. So perhaps we'll hear from the agent about the status of that. And the agent is Tomas Goral. Mr. Goral?
Good afternoon. Yes,
Yeah,
good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Thomas Goral.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We're just, sorry to interrupt, we're just going to put the right information on the screen. There was in your additional materials a revised sheet identifying the correct variance that was eliminated or reduced, sorry.
So you mean the one in our package has got variance 3, which is not correct, and that's why we have a revised. So
That's
this
correct,
is a
Mr.
revised
Chair.
notice from the materials, okay?
And here we go.
Okay, that was the second package we got either like late last night. Okay, so it's in fact variance 7, it's been eliminated, not variance 3. Okay.
Correct. And there are urban forestry conditions that which I believe still apply.
Yes, there's
2 and 3.
2 and 3, yes. Okay, but so the question is, what I can't really see that. That's the height variance, right? So that was the one I referred to, that there was a discussion about reducing it, but I didn't see it. So now we do have it. It is shown on the plan. So,
Correct.
right. So we eliminated that variance.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And there are no, yeah, there's transportation conditions in this one, right? Okay, so that's all we have left is we have urban forestry 2 and 3 and transportation. And we have 8 variances, but we have now the right one taken off. Mr. Garral, is there anything you'd like to add, or just see if committee members have any questions?
I was gonna just mention about that we did remove this variance, but you do have the right copy, so that everything seems correct. And basically, the reasoning for the other 8 variants is the property is a pie shape, and we are building on top of the existing footprint, so therefore we hit some of the variances, which was mainly side yard setbacks and east troughs.
Okay. Okay, any questions for the agent, committee members? Are we ready for a motion with that explanation?
I'm prepared to move a motion to accept this application. I find it to be minor nature and consistent with the 4 tests in the Planning Act, subject to conditions from urban forestry 2 and 3 and the transportation conditions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reddick. Seconder for that motion. Ms. Alderson, all in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Corral.
much. Have a good
Thank
day.
you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 27 is 127 Lake Crescent. And it's an application to enlarge the existing rear yard deck. Currently at 10 meters to 23.2 square meters. There's some talk about wanting a privacy screen. We have a previous decision in May 2008 for and planning is recommending refusal of the application. I just note this is a different owner, looks like, from the May 2018 application to build a new house. And in the additional materials that were provided late, we have photos of the encroachment by the neighbors with photos of a shed. So that was, I think, provided by the applicant at the last minute to show some photos. Registered as speakers on this is Francesca Tisci, the agent, as well as the owner, I guess, available for questions. So there are no neighbors who have registered to speak on this application, I take it. We do have a planning refusal. Planning is recommending refusal of the application. So is Francesca Tisci there?
Yes,
Okay, welcome.
thank you.
So I think we should get a presentation from you in light of planning's recommendation that the application be refused.
Sure.
Okay, you've
So
seen that as well,
basically-
and as well, the previous decision, that was for, I just wanted to open it up, that was for a new build, a detached dwelling?
Correct.
Yes, attached dwelling, attached garage was built, it was dated May 24, 2018, and I believe it was a different owner at that time.
Correct.
Okay, so why don't you give us a brief presentation of your client's position, why this, notwithstanding community planning's position, which I assume you've read, why this is worthy of support.
Sure. So basically, we are proposing to extend the existing deck with 8 feet. We are keeping the same length of it, but we are extending it with 8 feet. The variances required in this application are as follows. So the minimum required rear yard setback is 9.53 meters, but basically the proposed one is 8.24 meters from the rear of the property line. The variance number 2 states a platform without main walls attached to or less than 0.3 meter from a building with a floor no higher than the first floor of the building above established grade may encroach into the required rear yard setback with 2.5 meter if no closer to a side lot line than 2.29 meters. The outer rear deck will encroach 1.29 meter into the required rear yard setback and will be located 1.51 meter from the west side lot line and 1.25 meter from the east side lot line. Also, there is a third variance in this application that states that the minimum permitted area of a platform at or above the second story is 4 square meter. We are proposing to have a deck having an area of 23.2 square meter. So basically it exceeds the 4 square meter allowed.
Yeah, and I had a note here that it's currently 10 meters.
Yes, so basically we have an existing deck with a 10 square meter, which has been approved from the permit package for the two-story dwelling unit. And also, in order to mitigate the impact of the rear yard deck, we were proposing to have privacy screens on both sides of the deck, having a height of 5 feet and 6 inches.
Okay. Okay, so you've gone through, thank you, and basically gone through the variances. But I had asked you to tell us why those variances are worthy of support, why they're minor, given the planning report that says the increased area to 23.2 square meters at above the second floor is not in keeping with the prevailing physical character of the neighborhood in terms of size and height. Staff note that the proposal, if approved, would double the size of the existing rear deck, currently approximately 10 square meters, would also trigger variance for rear yard setback of 8.24 or 9 points. So you're a little over 1 meter too close on the rear yard. They say it's not in keeping with the prevailing character of the neighbor and it should be refused. So what I asked you is to explain why, notwithstanding planning saying it's out of character,
Sure.
it shouldn't be approved, why it should be approved.
Sure. So basically, we could find a similar construction with the one that we are proposing in the neighborhood, which is basically in the east side of the property. And one more thing that I would like to add in this application is like taking in consideration the backyard size. I believe that the deck size we are proposing, it's a reasonable size, taking also in consideration that we are respecting the side setbacks. If maintaining the minimum required rear yard setback in 9.53 meter would help in approving this application, that in this case actually we are willing to defer this application and provide with new drawings showing that 9.53 meter setback, rear setback from the rear of the property line, and having a new proposed extension of now 3 feet and 8 inches by 16 feet and 1 inches instead of 8 feet and 8 feet by 16 feet and 1 inches.
Okay, so now after you've been speaking for almost 5 minutes, you're saying if the committee wants to refuse it, you would want to defer and bring an application that's different? Like, I think it's a little late. You didn't ask for a deferral at the outset. Is that what you're basically saying? I'm trying to interpret. We have
Yes,
an
correct,
application
actually.
before us. We're into the middle of the application. It's too late to say, well, if you upon receipt of that, if you came this morning and said, look, I want to defer and change it or talk to planning, but now we're in the middle of the hearing. So Anyway, can you please wrap up, because I guess you're at 5 minutes, and then let's see what committee members have any questions for you. Like I said, there is no one here with any objection in terms of neighbors, it's just the planning department. So
Yeah, but
again,
basic.
and again, I guess if committee members are so inclined, I guess they could make a motion to grant your application, but with a reduced, is there a rear yard setback, or there's no rear yard setback? Mr. Carvalino, am I on the wrong? Oh, I went on to the next application, I'm sorry. Yeah, there must be a rear yard setback. So I guess what you're suggesting to committee members, from what I'm hearing, at this 11th hour, or 4 minutes into the 5 minutes, if that makes it 11th hour, is you're suggesting that as a fallback, Mr. Carvalino, am I looking at the right thing here? I'm trying to find the, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong application. It's 27. So 27 has, I guess the committee could, you're perhaps suggesting that as a fallback, if rather than refuse the whole application, you're suggesting that you would be willing to accept the elimination of variance 1, which is the rear lot line setback from 9.53, the extra foot and a bit, meter and a bit that you're over. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, yes.
But that would that affect the size of the deck at 23.2? See, that's the problem. We can't start redesigning things now.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway,
Makes sense.
let's see if committee members have any questions. It would have been nice to have known that at the outset, but because if you make it less, you bring it in, you make it 1.25 meters less deep, it's going to make it smaller. But we'd have to have that calculation. Any questions for the applicant members? Does anyone have any opine as to whether the application is fine or should be refused as community planning, or whether with eliminating the rear lot line and a slightly smaller or somewhat smaller second floor platform, you think it's worthy of support? I'd like to hear your views. Mr. Palmer?
Well, I think the applicant has admitted that the request is not minor because they're prepared to reduce it.
At the 11th
So
hour.
I'm prepared to refuse the application outright because it is not minor and not in keeping with the zoning bylaw or official plan, and it's not desirable.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
And in fact, you know, they've already got one built that's over the zoning. So I'm not sure how that got approved.
Right, it's already 10 square meters.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Motion to refuse, do you have a seconder for that motion? Ms. Alderson's hand went up before Ms. Ruddick, so I'll take that as a seconder. All in favor of the refusal of the application? Okay, the application is refused unanimously. So that point was moot. Okay, thank you, applicant. The application has been refused. Okay, our next application is item number 28, 42 BEMERSYDE Drive. Is that how you pronounce it? BEMERSYDE? Okay. Okay, it must be spring because another swimming pool application. Spring at COVID time. Pools becoming popular, pools and cottages. This is to construct a new below-grade swimming pool in the south side yard. There are 3 variances. We have a cover letter and presentation materials. There are 4 or 5 letters of support. Perhaps these people are all going to get invited to the pool, and 1 letter of opposition for 1 Winterbourne Court. Maybe they're not going to be invited to the pool. So that's all we have. We don't have any. We have urban forestry requesting condition number 2, but we have no other communications from city departments. And registered to speak, we have the agent, Reza Dadashi, and the neighbor from 1 Winterbourne with the objection letter registered to speak. So let's first hear from the applicant.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just an update. Hi there, my name is Reza Dadashi, office address is 20 Wortham Court in Richmond Hill. Just a quick update on the variances themselves. We're crossing out a couple of the variances.
Okay.
So we're deleting number 1 and number 3.
So the variance, floor area 38.2.3, whereas 10 meters is permitted, you're eliminating that that variance?
That's correct, yeah.
And then the third variance, again, very similar, located 1.6 meter from the residential building on the same lot. You're eliminating that one?
Correct, yeah,
So
that one's going as well.
So you only have one variance left, which is
We have a single
proposed-
variance before the committee here.
Right, so the swimming pool will be located 0.61 meters from the north side lot line. That's the one variance we have?
That's it. That's correct.
Okay, so let's see if that, let's go over to the neighbor here and see if that changes their opinion or not. And is that on that neighbor's side or it's the other side? I have to see what the neighbor's concern.
Yeah, the entire pool is near the neighbor's side, I guess.
Okay.
They're both corner properties.
Oh, they said they initially had support. Oh, they seem
Yeah,
to have
they
concern
initially
about some
supported the letter.
now there is an urban forestry condition number 2. It seems that their concern is with this, the linden tree, the effect on their healthy linden tree. And the drainage, whatever. So anyway, let's hear from the neighbor, and you'll have a chance to respond if assuming they're still concerned.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You've read their letter, I take it.
I have.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let's move it over to Mr. Pensky.
Very good. Well
Leila?
done.
Okay.
My name is Leila Yuzamiri Serpkenji, residing at 1 Winterbourne Court. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for reviewing my mother's letter and attachments. We are concerned regarding a lack of full transparency on the part of the applicant that may lead to decisions that will negatively affect our tree, our property, and our neighborhood.
Okay, so
If
just
it's
so
yes.
you first of all, you
Yes.
have heard that he's withdrawn 2 of his 3 variances, correct?
I have. Yes, I
Okay.
have. Yes,
so
I have.
your concern is like with the impact I read, like I just sort of summarized, the effect on the tree and generally drainage.
Yes, but also yes, but
Okay,
yes,
sorry for
if you
interrupting.
don't mind.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I've got a timer. I'll be spot on
Okay.
less than 5 minutes. I
Okay.
promise.
I'm starting
If you wouldn't mind, if we could put up the our presentation, my mother's and start off just with the number 2, slide number 2. It's labeled after the letter.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go through it. First, their submitted survey is not an accurate representation of the current structures in their backyard. The metal shed was replaced by a larger permanent structure, and their deck, which is probably equivalent to 1/4 to 1/3 of their home's footprint, is missing entirely from the submitted survey. This is important because the current lack of natural vegetation in their backyard to absorb surface water is already a concern during severe storms. Our home is 1.5 meters away from the property line, and there are 4 window wells on the east and south sides of the house in the vicinity of the proposed pool. In addition, we have not seen any elevation plans, and this is also a big concern. Their entire property slopes downwards towards us. Their house is at an elevation at least 1 meter above ours, so the addition of another structure so close to our property is a real issue. Water finds the path of least resistance, and any additional structure, such as the proposed pool, puts our property at risk. The only remaining lawn in their south side yard also slopes towards Bournemouth. So changes to the elevation of the site for the proposed pool will either increase water drainage issues, bury the critical feeder roots of our linden, or damage them during the construction. If you'd like, please to change to slide 3, page 3. Secondly, 10 days before the applicant filed their Committee of Adjustment application, they cut down a tree on their property that would have been in the middle of their proposed pool. The tree was considered mature when it was planted at least 20 years ago. We saw it being planted. We're concerned that its roots have now intertwined with those of our 50-year-old linden tree, which will complicate any proposed excavation. The measurements of the linden tree's drip line, which you can see on page 4, slide 4, were agreed by the neighbors to be at least 8 meters. Our arborist estimated that the drip line extends 3 meters over the property line into the proposed pool. Cutting or disturbing the feeder roots on such a mature tree may affect the health of the tree. Finally, if you look at slide 5, please, it is not common to have a pool in a side yard so exposed in this neighborhood. They are typically more privately located in backyards, and to put up a 6-foot fence around the entire perimeter will be an eyesore to the community. The applicant cannot expect the hedge, which was planted by the original owner architect and suits the unique architecture of their home, to protect the public from access to the proposed pool. There are gaps in the hedge that create a serious public protection issue. If you go to slide 6, we had noted actually that 2 of the 3 variances to the zoning bylaws sought by the applicant are not 10 or 50 or even 100% deviations from the bylaw requirement. One of them has been adjusted, but just as a point of note, the pool was more than 380% of the permitted area, and the proposed variance regarding the minimum side yard setback deviates more than 700% from the bylaws. This does not appear to be trivial or minor, nor does it seem to be within the intent of the zoning bylaw. It would be our expectation that the proposed pool should be compliant with all of the requirements of the applicable provisions of the zoning bylaw. Our family has lived here for almost 50 years. We've had a handful of different neighbors live behind us, and we have witnessed firsthand the impact of more frequent storms and intense rainfalls in this neighborhood. We believe that the acceptance and implementation of the applicant's project will have a materially negative impact by putting our property at risk for damaging water flows, as well as potentially jeopardizing a perfectly healthy, mature tree on our property. Our conversations with our neighbors to date, as well as our submission to this committee, have always been intended to summarize our concerns and to seek full and current information on the proposed project and its potentially significant ramifications for our property, which, unlike all the other neighbors, sits only 5 feet from our common property line. Thank you very much for your time. I'm finished, Chairman.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Penke before we go on to back to the agent for a rebuttal? So yeah, it's a corner lot. So yeah, so there is only that one variance remaining, which is the distance from the north side lot line. There's no other issues or variances identified other than that, given the other 2 have been withdrawn. So 0.61 from the north side lot line, whereas that a corner is 4.5, and the other 2 have been eliminated. So Mr. Dadashi, would you like to respond to the concerns of the neighbor at 1 Winterbourne?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for the comments. With respect to the trees and rainfalls, I can't really speak to those items.
There is an urban forestry condition, right? There is an urban forestry.
Yeah,
what trees did that refer
condition
to?
2. I think condition 2.
Does that refer to the linden tree or to the city tree?
No, we're not sure. We don't have any further information, but we understand that part of condition 2 is a full application to urban forestry to assess the health of all of the trees, I guess, that would be impacted. So we understand that aspect of it. Mm-hmm. With respect to putting up a fence, that's a required City of Toronto bylaw. Whether or not it's an eyesore is not really for debate. It's a health and safety measure, so there will need to be a fence put up to ensure people don't cross into the shrubs and a child falls in. With respect to the application before you, it is a single request of a variance that we're seeking here. We think it meets all the 4 tests. It's a neighborhood in the official plan. Single-family homes are allowed to be there. Accessory uses like swimming pools are allowed. The lot's kind of an interesting shape. I don't want to call it a pie shape, but it is a unique shape. The building geometry is unique. It's a single-story bungalow, and normally these are pretty wide. So if you pull up my presentation on slide number 1, you can see this easier.
Okay, Mr. Dadashi, the neighbor mentioned something about your survey not being accurate.
Yeah, we are using an outdated survey. We've provided that information. We've added the tree information onto this drawing here to illustrate them. We weren't initially showing them
So
we're
are
working with
are
the
your
material
plans
that we have.
accurate? Do your plans show the existing conditions? She said there was a larger shed. Does your site plan show the site conditions, the current site conditions?
As far as I'm concerned, that's correct. They've been approved. So on this drawing here, you'll see the pool in the southwest corner of the property. So the lot width is roughly, 80, 85 feet. The building itself is 70 feet. So that doesn't give a lot of room on the side yard, and that's really what's triggering the setback.
Yeah.
Now we've pushed it as far north as we can. In that red, you'll see a little pinch point. It's pushing up right against the building. I think we've got like a 2-foot walkway there. It isn't a substantially large pool. If we put it anywhere else on the property, we'd have to take down additional trees, etc.
Yeah, because they're a corner lot. Yeah. Yeah, obviously makes it more
exactly.
difficult to put in a pool when you have a corner lot like this because you don't have a traditional backyard.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that the building's really wide, it's not a narrow building and long. It's just it's an unusual circumstance. That's all.
Okay. Okay, committee members, any questions for the agent, Mr. Dadashi, or for the neighbor at 1 Winterbourne? Or is someone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, may I just make one comment?
Yes.
It's not correct. It is not correct to state.
Sorry. I thought it was you were one of the
All
panel
right.
members.
Oh,
We
sorry.
don't-
I said.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
sorry. We don't sort of go back and forth. As I said in the opening remarks, the applicant goes first. You have to say he gets to rebut. We don't unfortunately go back and forth. So unfortunately, unless you're asked a question, we can't really hear from you. So having said that, I'm going to open it up to committee panel members to see if they have any remaining questions for Mr. Dadashi, the agent, or for you, or else to see if they're ready to make a motion on this one variance and the fact we also have urban forestry condition number 2.
Mr. Palmer with a question for the applicant. So it's not possible to put the pool in the rear yard?
It's not possible with the existing trees as is.
So
If
you
you
could
see on that
remove a
site
tree
plan-
and not have the variance?
Possibly, correct. So
Did you
again,
review
this
that
var-
with your, did you review that with your client?
we have. They wanted to retain those trees. That was the decision that they made.
Okay.
So what's before us is what's before us. So, okay. Any other questions? Is someone ready to make a motion? And variances 1 and 3 have been removed.
Mr. Chair, this is a unique situation. As you pointed out, putting swimming pools onto corner lots isn't easy at the best of times. And this is a good example of that. My inclination is to declare the variance requested number 2 to meet the tests under the Planning Act generally. And I would move for approval subject to urban forestry condition 2.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you. Seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Alderson, all in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, thank you, Mr. Dadashi, and thank you, neighbor, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application, item number 29, 101 Smithwood Drive, is an application to, it's an application to, hold on a second. Construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling, a two-story rear addition, a new covered rear deck, and a new basement walkout. And there are 5 variances. The reason I hadn't really reviewed this was an application that was supposed to be deferred, but in the additional materials, we revised that the planning is now okay, that they've revised plans. Mr. Carvelin, is that correct? I don't see on our list of revised plans. It just says notice, plans, tree declaration, and support. There is no communication from community planning or...
Mr. Chair, it's in additional materials, the first one sent out.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. Originally, it was supposed to be deferred. It was on our automatic deferral list, I believe.
There was a request for deferral.
Oh, a request,
Yeah.
okay. And now it's apparently, I don't have the additional materials, but I did review them, and I think it said that planning is now okay with this application.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's an email in additional materials from the community planning coordinator, and she sets out what staff have reviewed, and the plans that were dated April 26, 2021, where they've reduced the height to 9.95 meters and to disregard staff's previous deferral recommendation of the report dated April 21st. There is a however. Should the committee choose to approve the application, is recommended that the following condition be imposed. So they do have a request of condition in their email of April 26th in additional materials.
Okay, because I did see that there was in the overall memo, deferral memo of the applications to be deferred today. Number 29 was definitely on the list, and it was to provide adequate time for staff to appropriately review the application, discuss any concerns, et cetera, et cetera. So then when the materials, does everyone have that before them? Because I don't have a copy before me in terms of what the conditions were. We do only have one speaker on this, Matthew Chong, the agent. So let's welcome Mr. Chong. So you can be.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is
afternoon.
Matthew Chong, agent for the homeowners at 101 Smithwood Drive. Before you, we've really only got, well, we do have the 6 variances. We did have discussions with staff regarding the height, and we have lowered the height to an appropriate level to the 9.95, which they've accepted. I think one of the biggest points on the coverage issue, if you would like to pull up our site plan, where we're talking about the 40% lot area. So I want to bring your attention to the corner of the building on the north side where we have a covered patio. And that's just a sort of in the upper left-hand corner of the house. So the issue to coverage goes to this covered patio. And this is an open patio. The intent is not to enclose this patio. My clients would like to have a covered area for a barbecue area, just out adjacent to their kitchen. The idea being to sort of prolong the outdoor experience, especially in this day and age during COVID, when we're all sort of trapped in our houses. The other reason that we wanted to cover that portion was to alleviate what we all know on a northern part of the site, where you're typically not going to get a ton of sun. You're going to get predominance of shade, so that it becomes a livable area for them. If it's a raining day, or if it's even snowing, they can still be outside to barbecue. But that area is unenclosed, but that goes to the coverage. And so that's where I think the contention is regarding the lot area, or sorry, the coverage on the lot. If this didn't go to coverage and was sort of uncovered, we would be much lower on the proposed area. The other one being the maximum floor space index here. The 0.67 is well within a number of committee of adjustment applications that have been approved. In fact, there has been 5 of them that have been approved at 0.67, 0.68, another one at 32 Silver Hill Drive at 0.68, 76 Charleston at 0.7. So it's entirely fitting within the neighborhood itself for the FSI. Regarding the where we have the overhang into the soffits. We think this is a minor variance. We're only asking for a bit of a relief on that, just due to the nature of the design of the roof. And if you look at the elevations, if you want to pull up A200, what we try to do is mitigate the roof style here in order to provide sunlight into the northern neighbor's lot. Sorry, keep going. It's not 200. It's maybe 201. Sorry. There we go. Perfect. And so this is already a raised bungalow. And in order to get the roof line to work properly over top of the existing garage, we had to raise the soffit height. As you notice on the elevation, which would be the northern side and the southern side, we provided sloped hip roofs in order to alleviate a monster gable on the northern neighbor's side to allow for sunlight to come into their backyard. If you want to scroll down to there, you see it. So you'll see where the soffit height is in order to make that hip roof possible. You'll also see where our covered patio is, and there are openings on that side. The solid area in between where the openings are on this elevation is where my client would like to put his barbecue. And if you scroll down one more, in the rear, you'll see that it's entirely open. There's no intent to make this enclosed. They really just want a covered portion to that northern part. And then we'll also have a open trellis, which does not go to coverage. And that's pretty much it in terms of how we wish to have the committee grant relief on our variances.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can we put up back on the sign the revised, that was in the revised notice, that was in the, can we get it a little bigger, or so? That variance 3 is, the height has been reduced. Okay, that was.
That's
the
correct.
change? Yeah, okay, that was the only change.
Right.
Let's see if committee members, thank you for that presentation, sir. Let's see if committee members have any questions for you. Or if they're ready to make a motion. And
Mr. Chair, I believe the requested variances to be in keeping with the board test under the Planning Act. So I move approval of the revised application, subject to the planning condition set out in an email dated April 26th, 2021 from Vanessa Cavello to Annalisa Mora. I could read that into the record if it would be appropriate to do that, or otherwise leave it the way I worded it.
yep, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. A seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Alderson. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Okay. Item number 30 is 152 AILEEN Avenue. Again, we have revised notice page highlighted to show the change, which is in fact a variance number 8, whereas the third-story platform has been reduced from 19.4 square meters to 5.89 square meters. We have it. This is, first of all, this application is for a new front porch, new rear deck, and second and third story additions above the existing dwelling. And there are 10 variances. And they've now reduced that third floor platform. We have no comments from anyone, area neighbors, or city departments. And we have Marin Zabzuni is the agent. Mr. Zabzuni, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Marin Zabzuni at 1140 the Queensway.
Okay, so you've reduced one of your variances, which is very nice. And it looks like there's no communication from anyone, being residents or planning or transportation staff or any of those, or urban forestry for that matter. So I don't believe we need a presentation, notwithstanding there's a lot of variances, unless committee members would like that. And otherwise, let's see if anyone has any questions for you. Unless there's something you'd like to add, Mr. Zabzuni, before we do that.
The reason we reduced the balcony area is we were actually working with city planning, reviewing the application, and they requested that, which we made, and then no other comments came up. I believe it fits the area. There's a lot of 3-story dwelling, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or someone ready for a motion?
I do have a question. One question.
Yep.
The property at 150, directly adjacent to the property in question, is that also your project?
No, it is not.
Okay. All right. So you have nothing to do with that at all whatsoever.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Or are we ready for a motion?
The conditions.
Yeah, I think everyone was on.
Did that come through?
No.
Please repeat.
I move for approval without conditions, as I believe the application meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion. Mr. Palmer, thank you. All in favor? Okay, you have unanimous approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zabzumi.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application is item number 26. Sorry, it's 26 Tremont, item number 31. It's for a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. Again, we have a revision sheet showing a reduction in the height. Under both bylaws, the new 569/2013 as well as the old bylaw, reduction in the height, dwelling height, from 11.81 to 10.5. Elimination of variance 7, reduction of variance 9, now variance 8 of the rear balcony. They took a whole 1 meter off of that from 11 to 10. And so we now have 10 variances rather than 11. Still a lot of variances. And we have 3 letters of support and 3 letters of opposition. We have the revised plan, the zoning waiver. We have planning. Would like a condition of approval to be constructed in the, as illustrated, regarding the building length. And that would be having it tied to the, which plans? Architectural plans as relate to building length of the basement, ground floor, and second floor. So that's the one condition. And transportation condition as well. So speaking on this application is the agent, William Dewson, as well as we have parties registered to speak from 5 Cranston, 55 Redcar, and 26 Tremont. So let's start off with Mr. Dewson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm William Dewson, agent and architect for Hafiz and Sharifa Habib, owners of 26 Tremont.
Oh, so they're not going to speak. They're listed as a speaker, but you're speaking on their behalf. So
that is correct.
We have 2 speakers then registered other than you. And I also forgot to mention there is urban forestry condition number 2 on this, as well as the planning condition and transportation. So would you like to give us just a very brief presentation?
Yes, I'd like to speak first to variances 1, 2, and 7. 7 has been removed. 1 and 2, they deal with the depth of the building. This is only for a storage area under a rear deck. We have been in negotiation with planning as well as our neighbor to the north. And if you would, moderator, if you could pull up the revised plans and take us to drawing A012. That's it. Our building is the darker gray building between the lighter gray buildings to the north and to the south. The actual building above grade is in accordance to depth and length bylaws. And if we switch to, and you can see it aligns with our neighbor to the north, and it is much less than the neighbor to the south. If we can go to A114, that's the backyard. We have worked with our neighbor to the north with their deck and our deck we've negotiated them to be same height, approximately 1 meter above grade. And they are comfortable with the privacy that we are creating with our screening and their screening. Okay, if we could flip to A204, please, moderator. This is an elevation of the rear with a section through the storage area that you can see on the lowest level. You can see that the neighbor to the north or the left on this diagram, this drawing, is at the same level of porch or deck, back deck. At this point, I want to switch to the height variances 3, 4, 5, and 6. Specifically, 5 and 6, the reduction to 10.5 meter, a meter above as of right building height. In the lower corner of this drawing, there is, what we're fighting against is a high water table and getting a 2-story building underneath the maximum height allowed. The basement is currently at the high water table in springtime, and the peak of this traditionally sloped roof, it's an 8 by 12 sloped roof. It's just that peak between the 2 grid lines that pokes up above the allowable height. We have negotiated again with planning, and we've agreed that 10.5 is a reasonable application for this variance, or a reasonable height for this variance. We have agreement with both our north and south neighbor. We've walked through shadow studies with each of them, and they are in full support of our application, in particular the height. And I want to also point out that we want to maintain the pitch of this roof. We have a solar array on the south facade for generation of electricity. The next variances that are up are 8 and 10, which is side yard relief. You'll notice in this diagram to the right is a raised ramp on our south side. It's the right side of this. It's a little higher than our neighbor's grade. This is for handicap access to the property from our south entrance. If you could quickly, moderator, now go to drawing A013, back up to the site plans and the blown up site plans. Yes. Here you can see the ramp to the south, the black triangle noting the entrance. There is a ramp. You can see that both side yards are quite ample.
Yes, sir. You have can wrap up. You have about half a minute left.
Okay. Also on this, if you could zoom in, the driveway width. Well, actually, leave it here. The driveway width, we're asking for 5.2. You'll notice that The existing driveway is 5.2 meters wide. The entrance between the existing sidewalk and Tremont, but it is misaligned with our neighbors to the south. We are proposing to realign but keep the same width dimension across the ditch that exists. Our neighbor to the north is 6.2 wide, and the south is 6.8 wide. And again, there's 22, 20, 17, 15, Tremont. All of these driveways are beyond the width that we're requesting.
Yeah.
And that's a summary.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. You'll have a chance to respond to the neighbors' concerns. So the next neighbor is going to speak, or one of Clive Anderson or Anna Anderson Fettergreen of 5 Cranston. In fact, they both signed the same letter. So in fact, when I said there are 3 letters of opposition, there are in fact only 2 letters of opposition, if anyone's keeping track.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't able to get them during the sound check, but I see them now, so I'm going to try.
Yeah, we do have their letter, so if they're there, that's great. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson?
Come on. Yes, we are here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you, Mr.
my
Are you
wife
Clive
and I-
Anderson? Can you
I am
state your
Clive
name?
Anderson.
Okay, thank you.
Clive Anderson. Stop all that one.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. I'm glad to hear there's consideration by the homeowner for the north and south neighbors. We are on the east side, addresses my concern due to the sloping of the garden. I'm concerned about this large house, large deck, an additional large building, I believe described as a cabana for people who might be swimming. The variances that are being sought in depth and height, I don't believe are minor in nature. And I'm concerned that the location of the pool and the pool deck also is not minor in nature. And I'm concerned that the size of this proposed overbuild will negatively impact the draining of rain and melting snow, particularly down to my property, which is eastwards. And I'm concerned that the runoff water to the boundary will cause pooling. I'm requesting, if I'm allowed to do that, that a grading plan may be required to guide your decision. And has a water drainage study been completed? I noticed the comment of the previous speaker talks about a high water table at basement level. I'm concerned about that.
Our basement.
Additionally, I feel that some of these changes will be a detriment to the neighborhood. For many years, the houses backing onto this property have had a lot of trees, and there are, of course, birds, animals, and privacy for people in the backyard. So, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request that the adjustment refuse this application. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Anderson before we move to the next speaker? Okay, so next speaker is Alexei Matvienko at 55 Redcar Avenue.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the committee for your time. My name is Alexei Matvienko, and I live at 55 Redcar Avenue. The applicants and us share the property line between our backyards in the area of the proposed auxiliary building and the proposed swimming pool. So we're to the north of the applicant, they're to the south, but we're not on the Tremont Road. We're on a different road from the north and south neighbors that the representative had mentioned. We fundamentally have no objections to any of the proposed variances, and we even support some of them. Overall, we welcome the proposed plan and the change that this modern and sustainable design brings to the neighborhood. In our opinion, it doesn't diminish the quality or the character of the neighborhood, but rather improves it. Our area has a lot of houses built in the 50s and 60s, and the design choices that were made back then still control how our neighborhood looks and feels to this day. And those design choices were less energy and resource efficient and not aligned with the environmental needs of our planet in this decade. So if more dwelling in our area used the designs and the ideas that the applicants have proposed in their design, that would actually make for a more sustainable neighborhood and a better city. In particular, we want to support the maximum permitted building height and the second-story balcony. It is our understanding that the proposed revised height is 10.5 meters. We support this variance. There's at least 3 trees between us and the applicants that have a much taller height than the proposed house would have. It doesn't create any sun blockage for us, and it does not create any privacy issues for us. Also, the balcony area that is more than that is being proposed is twice as big as the 4-meter squared bylaw allowance. This does not protrude far, and we understand that what it does, it just spans the length of the rear wall, which is 10 meters long, which is how they get to be over 10-meter square footage. So this does not create any privacy issues for us. We have no objections to it. The only things that we have that are of interest to us are not pertaining to the variances listed in the public hearing, but pertain to the proposed plan overall. One of them is that during the jackhammering of the demolition phase and the ground compacting of the foundation building phase, to be notified, because those produce a lot of vibrations, a lot of noise, makes working from home impossible. And since we're all stuck from our home, being notified in advance would just allow us to plan our lives and plan out our days. And then second being that the auxiliary building that is proposed, we understand that this is a shared concern between us and the applicants to make sure that there's a plan in place for a reduced sewer smell. I understand that they want to have a bathroom in the cabana in this auxiliary building, and to control the mechanical noise that any kind of pumping and cleaning mechanical components might produce. But like I said, we understand they also want the same thing that we do. We just want to make sure that that is reflected in the plan, and the committee is aware of this. That is all for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Just to let you know, obviously people have concerns during construction with noise and vibration and timing of work. Those are not matters that are before the committee. We certainly can't impose those as conditions, but there are issues. You have recourse. You can get in touch with the building department. You can call 311, but we can't start imposing conditions to, give neighbors advance notice of noise or anything like that. But there are procedures that if you feel you've not necessarily your neighbor, but just his construction crew, there are opportunities and avenues available for that. Okay?
Understood. And I just want to make clear for the committee that the applicants and I have had a very good discussion and very open channel communication. So I'm not foreseeing this to be a problem. I just wanted that this kind of concern is taken into account by the committee because of COVID and that everyone's stuck at home. That's all, even though it's not part of the bylaw.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so Mr. Dewson, if you'd like to respond to the concerns raised by primarily the neighbor at 5 Cranston, and as well as the comments from Mr. Matvienko, and then we'll take it into committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to Mr. Anderson at 5 Cranston, his depth and height concerns, we have addressed those. The depth concern, that is tied to the revised plans, and the revised plans show that the depth variance is for below grade storage area underneath the rear deck. So it will not affect the massing of the building. In terms of the height of the building has been reduced with planning. And they are in full support of our height reduction. And as far as shadows or anything like that, due to the nature of the depth of our lot and the distance that Clive is from his property from our property, the shadows will have no effect whatsoever on his backyard. With rear yard runoff and his concerns about drainage and things like that, I understand those concerns. We're not asking for any variances in terms of hardscaping or softscaping. We will be following all bylaw regulations in terms of rear yard landscaping. We will also be following the bylaws as they relate to grading and regrading. Nothing that is currently being drained and within our property will be altered to be draining on any neighbor's property, specifically Clive. So we will be following all bylaws there. We're not asking for any variances. I think that responds to Clive, and I just want to thank Alexi for his open dialogue with us from 55 Redcar. It's been great to be able to work with a neighbor, and we'll make sure that we keep them notified during construction of noise and smells and all the rest of it. Do you have any questions?
Okay, let's see if committee members have any questions or if they're ready for a motion. So anyone have any questions for the agent, Mr. Dewson, or from the other neighbors for that matter, or is someone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I find the variances requested meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval subject to urban forestry condition 2 and the conditions requested by the Transportation Department and the Planning Department.
Okay. Thank you. Seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion. Okay, so Ms. Roddick's hand go up.
Sorry,
first.
what was sorry, just for clarification purposes, what was required from the community planning? Because I don't have anything on that.
Build constructed as illustrated regarding the building length.
Okay.
Keep them honest on the building.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ms. Roddick.
I can second that
seconded,
motion.
and Ms. Roddick beat you. She beat Mr. Palmer too. So all in favor? Okay, you got unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Dewson. Thank you, neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Subject
Have
to
a nice day.
conditions, yes. Okay, item number 32 is 200 Gamma Street. It's to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There are 4 variances. Planning has a condition of approval. Construct as illustrated in the site plan regarding the rear yard setback. That is on, we have urban forestry number 1, and that's all we have. No other communication from neighbors or from city departments. We do have with us the applicant. We do have, I said forestry, urban forestry number 1. We do have here the owner, Samanjit Lubaba on 200 Gamma, as well as the neighbor at 198B Gamma. So let's hear from the owner. Mr. Lubaba.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairperson and Executive Committee members. My name is Sumanjit Libana, and I'm the owner of the property. I'm proposing to build a 2-story house with 4 minor variances. There are variances for the lot coverage, GFA, height, and the rear yard setback for the house. All the variances that we are proposing are minor in nature and are quite less than what has been approved by the Committee of Adjustment. The planning was very kind enough to have a discussion with us regarding that, and they had supported the application, provided we build as proposed in the site plan, particularly regarding the rear yard setback.
Yes, I mentioned that, yeah.
Thank you. And particularly regarding the rear yard setback, we are violating the variance by 0.33 meter, and it is only restricted or less than even half of the property. Like it's like the rear setback is only for 4.8.
Sure, yeah, that's not across the whole property. That's why they want to tie it to the plans. So, sir, it's very straightforward. I don't think we need more of a presentation from you going through the variances, but let's hear from the neighbor. There is a neighbor, like I said, planning's okay other than that condition, which you're happy with. We had a copy of the site-specific zoning bylaw. We don't have anything else. No other department or neighbor has commented in writing, but we do have the neighbor at 198B here to make a presentation or to let us know what their concerns are. So you'll have a chance to respond to that, okay? So I think we've, I don't think, unless committee members have any questions for you at this time, let's hear from the neighbor and we'll come back to you.
Hi, my name is Brian. I live in 198B Gamma Street, and house next door to the construction that is going to be happening. So my concern is a couple of reasons. It's more in regards to the rear yard setback. This house would be the only one farthest away across all of on our street that would be going all the way towards the backyard. Like there's no one else on our streets that goes that further back. Secondly, by going in regards to the rear yard setback, I'd be also losing sunlight. And I'm also concerned is in regards to the drainage of going onto my property, which might cause is flooding in terms of my house, which would have a dramatic impact upon myself and my family. So those are the main concerns that I have. It's more in regards to the yard setback than anything else.
Okay, sir, you realize the rear yard setback is required to be 8.08 meters, and they're going to have it at 7.75 and not across the whole lot. So the difference is like 0.32, it's about a foot difference. They're going at basically 1 foot or 0.32 or 33 of a meter beyond what they're allowed to do. Right? They're allowed to
Correct.
go back
And
8. So it's not a big difference. It's 1 foot further back and not across the whole lot, just as shown on their plans. So I don't know if that helps you or not, but they're only going back an extra on only half of it, and I don't know if that's the half next to you. The side that the garage is on, is that the one more adjacent to your side, or?
See, that's confusing because the plan to me is not really 100% clear. So,
okay, all I'm telling you that they're going back. They're going back. They're allowed to go back a certain distance to the rear yard, and then they're going 0.32 of a meter, a foot back, further than they're allowed to as of right, and only on half of the property. So it's not a huge thing. But anyway, you're entitled to the owner can respond to your concern, but I'm trying to tell you that nothing to be overly concerned about. It looks worse than it does. It's only 1 foot more than the way I'm reading it than they were entitled to go to as of right, and only on half the property. So any other concerns other than that issue with the side? Do you see the effect on your drainage and sunlight and everything from that 1 foot extra extension on half the lot?
That would be my mainest concern, but do keep in mind, like this house would be the one that would be furthest back across everyone else within on our streets. There's no one else that has this far back.
And you know that
well.
for sure. That's how do you know that all the houses in the street, none of them go back any further?
Well, I'm just looking at on visual. Well, I'm looking at it visually from what I can see from my deck. That there's no one else further back. Have I surveyed them out? No, I haven't.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just on a visual.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much. We'll pass on those concerns. Mr. Lubaba will have a chance to answer, and the committee members have heard your concerns. Okay. Thanks so much. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Clara before we finish with him? No? Okay. So, Mr. Lubaba, you've heard the concern of your neighbor. You've advised you're okay with that staff condition, which will keep you honest in terms of the rear yard setback is only on about half of the property. I'm trying to see.
Right, Inspector Chair. Thank you for bringing up that concern. First of all, I would like to address that the rear yard setback is actually facing 202 Gamma Street. It is not actually facing the 198 Gamma Street. So it actually is only affected on the other property, other end of the property. Secondly, we are actually not taking any variances for the depth of the property. We are less than 17 meters, so we are 16.76 meters, and that also on the widest part of the property.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. So, yeah, so in fact, Mr. Clara is on the other side. He's not affected by the jet out in the rear. The side adjacent to his side actually complies. That's why you're tied to the plan. Any further questions for the applicant or the neighbor? Is someone ready to bring a motion? And we have urban forestry 1 on this one, as well as the planning condition.
I'm prepared to bring a motion to approve this application. Find that it's minor in nature and meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, subject to the planning condition and urban forestry condition number 1 as well.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. Seconder for that motion? Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, thank you. You have unanimous approval of the application.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, committee members.
Okay. Okay, 2 more left in the 1 p.m. Session, and then we'll have to take a short break and come back and do the 3 p.m. Agenda matter items. This is item number 33, 3636 Street. 3636. This is an application to, oh yeah, this is the one where the purpose of the application, I pointed out to Mr. Carvalino, is not mentioned on the notice. However, we'll have to include a motion. It is apparently on the, it was on the circulation. It did have the purpose of the application, so we'll have to make a motion at some point
to include in the decision.
To put it in.
But it was sent out within the prescribed Planning Act time, which it included the purpose of the application.
Which
Sorry
is?
about that.
What a good segue to tell us what that purpose is. Okay. Okay, so the purpose. Purpose of the application, construct a 1-story rear addition. And again, there was only 1 variance on this application. The FSI from 0.35 to 0.41, and there are, there's nothing else, I don't believe. We only have 1 speaker, Ryan Dunlop, the agents. Mr. Dunlop.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very straightforward, 1 variance. We'll have to make a motion to add the purpose. Is there anything you'd like to add before I take it into committee?
No, I think everything was pretty straightforward on this one, just a 1-story addition. The homeowner was wanting to add this on as their elderly parent is going to move in with them, so.
Yeah, okay, so you're only about 34 square meters over and above what you can build as of right.
Correct.
And you only have that 1 variance. So committee members, any questions for Mr. Dunlop, or are we ready for a motion? I don't see any urban forestry or any other condition here other than the motion. Perhaps you can bring a motion together with your decision or your to insert the purpose of the application in the decision.
I'm prepared to do that right now. It's a rear 2-story addition above the existing dwelling.
Just 1.
Just a 1-story.
1-story.
A 1-story addition, rear 1-story addition. So a motion to add that to the notice. So do I need to get approval first, or can I just proceed?
Just proceed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to approve the single variance that is listed in the notice.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Alderson. Seconder for that.
With no conditions.
Right, Ms. Reddick, thank you. All in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Dunlop.
Perfect. Thank you, committee.
Okay, and our last application of the 1 p.m. agenda, item 3430, Lambton Avenue. It's an application for a detached dwelling with an attached garage. 2 variances, there were 3, so we have a revised notice page. I always like to see those because it looks like something's been done to make someone happy. So we have a revised notice page, eliminating variance number 1, which is the depth variance, reducing the length variances from 22.86 to 19 meters, and variance number 3 remains as is. The excavated area below the front porch will be maintained. We have urban forestry conditions 2 and 3. We have an applicant's submission, revised zoning plans and review and plans, and a covering letter, really just an email. Angus Skeen, only speaker.
Yes.
Agent. Hello, sir.
Yes, hi. I'm Angus Skeen. I'm the architect and agent for the application.
Okay, very straightforward application. Only 2 variances. You've eliminated one, you've reduced another. Anything you'd like to add before I bring it into committee for a decision?
No, we're comfortable with everything that's before you.
Yeah, the urban forestry and the changes you made to the variances. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Skeen, or is someone ready to bring a motion?
I'm ready to bring a motion to accept the application as revised, subject to the herbistry forestry condition number 2 and 3, and I believe those were the only conditions.
Correct. Thank you, Ms. Reddick.
Thank you.
Seconder for that? Ms. Alderson, all in favor? Unanimous approval, and we, I guess we'll continue at what, 4:15, Paul?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we break, item 19, we made a decision on the application, but they were asking for a refund as well.
Yeah, I pointed a note to, I gave Phil a note saying we forgot to discuss that. So perfect time, we said we can deal with that. We can call the applicant, I don't know, or maybe we should do that just before the 3 o'clock, or? Okay, I gotta go to the washroom. So, yeah, I noticed that also. So he had asked we deal with that. Oh, he's on?
The applicant
Okay,
is still
so
on.
let's do it now, before we break. Okay, so going back to item number 19, the applicant had requested, this is the one with the 7 new variances with respect to a pool. I don't know, you know, the work was, my position is the work was done. Committee is not the plans examiners. Committee is supposed to be self-sufficient. The work was done. You have 7 variances, and not like something you're coming back for something. That would be my position on the, read the letter very carefully with respect to the request for a refund. Was he asking for a full refund of the entire application? Okay. So I don't know if any other member, what everyone else feels on that with respect to the request for a refund. I believe did I abstain on this application, or I voted against it, or that's right. I said there seemed to be some blame of city staff, but whatever the case, back in 2018, for whatever reason, and requirement that they wanted to get the house built and closed in before winter, and everyone, you know, time is money. They did agree to this. They didn't have to agree to it. So that would just be my position to the request. Other members, what do the panel members feel in terms of the request for a refund here?
I don't know if you read my email, but he's had a tough year. So I'm feeling a little more sympathetic towards him, and I'm wondering if a partial refund is in order.
All I'm saying is...
Laura, were you referring to this application in your email or another application?
No, that's him. He lost both his parents from COVID this past year. So he's had a tough year, and I'm glad we didn't ask him to fill in his swimming pool. So
all I'm saying
it's up to the committee.
To me,
it's up to the committee.
We don't make decisions on whether people are having a good year or a bad year or losing. You know,
I get that.
That's a terrible thing, but I don't know what it has to do with getting a refund.
It is a terrible thing. So I'm just wondering if a partial refund is in order. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Because the taxpayers end up footing the bill. Committee is supposed to be self-sufficient in terms of the operate out of the fees that are raised, and the work was done. So, and I don't.
I'm just putting it out there, Michael.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, so I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in or just have a vote, but is there anyone?
I'm not in favor of the refund, and I'm not sure. I'm not in favor of the refund. I don't know if you want a motion. So if there's a motion, I'd put forward a motion to reject the request for the refund.
Okay, so that's a starting point. So we have a motion to refuse the refund request. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Laura, you want to? Okay. Okay, so there's no refund, and now we can have our break. Thank you.
Okay. How long?
Yeah, you have to do the call in and all that stuff.
So I didn't hear how long either. Are we coming back at 4:30? Did he say
4:30? Maybe.
I don't.
It's 4:07 now.
Yeah, it's 4:30.
4:30. Okay.
Is everybody gone?
Yes, it's
Okay,
4:30.
well, we'll come back at 4:30. They can't start without us.
That's right.
4:30. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Let's let the four of us agree that it's 4:30.
Yeah.
4:30.
How about that?
Yeah.
See you then.
Agreed.